Good morning. Welcome to the October 30th session of the Montgomery County Council. We've been discussing for more than the last hour about discussing our legislative agenda in Annapolis. There's a lot going on there. And now we will turn to our agenda for the day here. And we're going to begin with a reflection. And we're joined by Lintaro Donovan, and he's a junior at Montgomery Blair. And we have asked him to come and share some thoughts on the challenge of democracy and government. So please share with us what you have prepared.
Good morning, council members. My name is Lintaro Donovan. As you know, is the mic on? Well, good morning again, council members. Sorry.
One moment, Lintaro. Is there something we're supposed to do with the lights?
The lights are off.
All right.
For the video transmission, so we can see.
Okay. Very good. So we can see the video. But you're going to speak first.
Okay.
All right.
Good morning again, council members. My name is Lintaro Donovan, as you know. And I'm a junior at Montgomery Blair High School. And first off, I would just like to say what an honor it is that I've been asked to give this reflection here today. And this reflection will be about the nature of good governance, or rather, try to attempt an answer to that eternal question: how do we ensure government? It's the ultimate tool of a sovereign people to order their lives, protect their homes, and secure their liberty. It can achieve some of the greatest goods: building opportunity for the deprived, bringing unity to the divided, and providing hope for the hopeless. But this noble tool is also a fickle one indeed. And when government grows irresponsible, immoral, and unjust, when bad governance overtakes the good, it's the people that get hurt. And so, to ensure good governance, all politicians, most importantly local ones, have to be ready. They must be ready to make the hard decisions that may not always be the most politically expedient. The right decisions that put the greater good over individual whims. The ones that uplift, unite, and preserve. To help you, the fine council members of Montgomery County, in this virtuous task, I ask that we together reflect upon a pearl of wisdom from one of America's greatest presidents, Mr. John Adams. Government is instituted for the common good, for the protection, safety, prosperity, and happiness of the people, and not for the profit, honor, or private interest of any one man, family, or class of men. This statement encapsulates the sole warrant of American governance. Government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. It must be benevolent and fair, but also must be disinterested. And so must its trustees. These officers of state must always put the people first, upholding their oaths to diligently and faithfully, without partiality or prejudice, execute the office of council member. Thank you. It truly has been a pleasure to speak to all of
you. Thank you. That was very nice. I appreciate your being here today to share those thoughts and certainly help illuminate our guiding vision here. And in a moment, we are going to go into our presentations, and we have also some addendums, including there will be an item on the consent calendar that really is related to the tragedy, the gun violence of the past few days, and council members may have comments that they wish to make at that time. I think at the moment it might be appropriate to just have a moment of silence to reflect upon the massacre in Pittsburgh, the attack in Kentucky, and our continuing problem with racial terrorism and gun violence. Thank you. And now we will proceed to our presentations. We have a proclamation recognizing Domestic Violence Prevention Awareness Month by Councilmember Katz. We have a video.
I'm doing a job for the courts. The judge deemed it necessary to sign these orders.
Javier here? Coming this way?
Every day of the week, Montgomery County Sheriff's deputies are working to prevent domestic violence.
Somebody thought that he was a threat to himself or others. So with those allegations, that could stem into a domestic violence issue. If he's supposed to be on medication, he could easily turn on a family member or anything like that, and it could turn into a domestic related situation real quick.
Here in Montgomery County, in any given year, there are more than 5,000 911 calls relating to domestic abuse. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office is the lead agency for serving domestic violence petitions and peace orders.
Yeah, anytime that you're involved in these sort of domestic situations, it is inherently dangerous with law enforcement.
Domestic violence is a public health issue. It's estimated that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 10 men experience victimization by an intimate partner. Not only does domestic violence cause physical harm, it also can advance mental health issues, homelessness,
Have you ever experienced domestic violence?
and can even result in death.
We're here for you. We support you. We believe you. And here are your options. Here's what we can do for you. Here are the different steps forward that you can take. Because when you've been controlled and manipulated for so long, part of that healing process is deciding your own path forward. And that's why we're here, to help those who need it and to educate those who know someone.
Someone like Cheryl Kravitz. Today, she lives a normal life here in Montgomery County, but that hasn't always been the case. In the 1970s, she married a man who would make her life a living nightmare.
He started by pushing, by verbal abuse, to just say, oh, it's just a one-time thing, it'll pass, but it doesn't pass. What happens with abusers, they're very, very smart, and it turned out that, he would beat me from the neck down, so I was totally black and blue from the neck down, but my face wasn't touched.
She began to ascend in her career, which made things even more difficult at home.
Well, for him, this was untenable because I was getting praise from outside sources that he wasn't getting at all. So the higher I got, within the city, the lower his self-esteem became. A couple of times, sometimes in the middle of the night, after he had passed out, I would I would drive myself to the Red Cross and just go in my office and just sit there and cry. But I never thought about telling anybody. I was too embarrassed.
Each year, approximately 3,000 victims of domestic violence come to the Montgomery County courts seeking protection.
I think judges need a lot more education on domestic violence. A judge recently told a victim, I think you're lying because you didn't tell me that he threatened to kill you. If I were a victim, I would remember that. Well, she wrote it down. She was more concerned about the attempted rape, and that's what she told him. She didn't have a lawyer. She didn't have an advocate. And I asked recently a judge who's been on the bench for 15 years, do you ever get training in how trauma affects testimony? The answer was no. That's just wrong.
Statistics show that 3 women are murdered every day by an intimate partner, and that women between the ages of 18 and 34 are at the greatest risk of becoming victims of domestic violence. Cheryl Kravitz got away from her abuser, but for years she lived in fear that he would find her. In 1995, she learned he had died, but to this day, she still carries the protective order she received years before as a reminder of how far she has come.
Since that time, I've been doing a lot of speaking and writing, but I also hear from women all the time who I talk with about what their options are, because there are options.
If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, these Montgomery County resources are available to you at no cost. Domestic violence and abuse can happen to anyone. For County Cable Montgomery, I'm Susan Kennedy.
Thank you for that video, Susan. That was terrific. And now we'll have a presentation by Councilmember Katz.
Could ask everyone who's involved in this proclamation if you could please come down. I know that there's a significant number here, and of course it's a significant number of people that work in Montgomery County for this. I know that because I'm the chair of the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council and have been for the last 2 years. This is an important recognition for all of us, and I'm going to ask each person to identify themselves, please, and we'll start right here. Well, we can, yeah.
Debbie Feinstein. I'm chief of the Special Victims Division for the State's Attorney's Office.
Captain Sean Gagan with the Montgomery County Police Department, Special Victims Investigations Division.
Good morning, Nicole Drew. I'm the president of the Montgomery County Commission for Women.
Patty McClay, member, Commission for Women.
Carmen Carrad, Montgomery County Commission for Women.
Tracy Evans, County Commission for Women.
Risa Levy, Montgomery County Family Justice Center Foundation Director.
Eshigo Akasali, member, Domestic Violence Coordinating Council.
Hi, Spencer Cantrell with the Jewish Coalition Against Domestic Abuse.
Tom Mannion, Director of the Family Justice Center with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office.
Ngozi Obiname, Program Manager for the Family Justice Center with Montgomery County Sheriff's Office.
Lieutenant Jordan Satinsky, Montgomery County Police Department Special Victims.
Smita Varia, Program Manager, Domestic Violence Coordinating Council through the Office of the Sheriff.
Ingrid Gonzalez, Division of Parole and Probation, Silver Spring Field Office.
Sola Shaw, member of Education Outreach Committee.
Jody Finkelstein, Montgomery County Commission for Women.
Thank you all very much for being here. And as is obvious, it takes many people to work together to make certain that we do the best job that we can possibly do. So for all of those reasons, I brought a proclamation from the council, whereas on an average 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. In 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million men and women. And 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have been the victim of some form of physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 10 high school students in Maryland report experiencing physical violence in a dating relationship, and 1 in 15 children are exposed to domestic violence each year. And October is national, and whereas October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and the Montgomery County Family Justice Center, located in Rockville, Maryland, offers free, confidential services to women, men, and children impacted by domestic violence. And whereas information about the Family Justice Center is available online, in courthouses, on ride-on buses, and in community centers throughout the county, and the simple message, "Are you afraid of your partner? Free help is available," is published in 16 different languages to reach members of our community from diverse backgrounds. And whereas the Montgomery County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council offers education and resources for community members, including Choose Respect Montgomery, a teen dating violence prevention initiative, and together we can reduce the incidence of domestic violence in Montgomery County through public awareness. And now, therefore, and this is a combined proclamation, Isaiah Leggett as county executive and Hans Reamer as the county council president proclaim the month of October 2018 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Montgomery County. And we ask our community to recognize the pervasive problem of domestic violence, to support our friends and family in the process of seeking services, and to spread the word about the help available in the Family Justice Center. And I'm going to ask the sheriff if he would like to say a few words, please.
On behalf of the incredible Domestic Violence Coordinating Council and the staff at the Family Justice Center who are saving lives on a daily basis, I want to thank Councilmember Katz for his years of service and commitment to the Family Justice Center, and to the entire council. More than 10,000 victims have walked through our door over the years that we have been open. And because of the support of the Montgomery County Council and the support of Mr. Leggett as county executive, there has never been any sort of issue that we've ever had to worry about as far as funding or any other support that our victims need that come through our doors. So on behalf of the Commission for Women, On behalf of the Domestic Violence Coordinating Council, I want to thank the council, thank the executive, and specifically Councilmember Katz for this tremendous recognition. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And we're going to take a photo, so if I could ask my colleagues to please stand. I know you stand with us every day, so if you could please stand with us on this picture.
All right. Again, thank you, City Katz. Thank you to everyone involved in the work that we just proclaimed, because it's very challenging and so important. Now we have a proclamation recognizing Hughes Network Systems and their top 10 ranking in Fortune Magazine's 2018 Change the World list by Councilmember Rice.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And going from one measure of social impact locally to one measure of social impact around the world, I'd like to invite my partners from Hughes to come on up. We've got Zave Zaluko with who's the Executive Vice President of Service Delivery, Tony Bardo, who's our Assistant Vice President for Government Solutions, Deb Chowdhury, who's our Senior Director of Programs, Sharon Nierenberg, who's our Director of Communications, Dan Brown with Communications. Is Paul Gasky out here as well? No, he wasn't able to make it. Okay. And Marilyn Balcom from the Gatesburg Germantown Chamber, come on up. I know that David Petter also wanted to be here as well. We always talk about our corporations being great partners. And many of you don't know this, but I actually used to work for the government of Puerto Rico before coming here to the council. And so I have a special tie and know a lot of people who are in that region, and tried to reach out to a number of my friends when the hurricane hit and couldn't reach them. One of the things that we always think about during a natural disaster is always about food, clothing, and shelter. And those are the essentials. Those are the things that are so important when we're trying to make sure that folks are taken care of. But I promise you, the very first thing that we all do to make sure that our loved ones are taken care of and to be able to reach people is to pick up our cell phones and try and call someone. Folks don't know this, but every single transmission line that was in Puerto Rico was down. And it was a company like Hughes Network Systems who came in thinking about what they could do. There were people on the ground like Jose Andres who were trying to feed people. There were folks who were delivering, American Red Cross was delivering clothing and helping with shelter. But the key thing to get this country back up again, to have the businesses start to work again, to have loved ones be able to reach each other, and some parts of Puerto Rico are very, very non-connected to the rest of the island. And so it makes it very difficult for them to have communications. And so even for them to assess what the damage was in certain areas and be able to transmit that information via emergency responders was all challenged. And so Hughes came in and said, you know what we can do? We can have these very small aperture terminals, these VSATs, to establish satellite internet access, enabling communication between residents and emergency first responders and medical professionals to make sure that they gave life-saving resources to this country. And so it's really something for me that is personal, as well as something that was recognized by a great organization like Fortune Magazine. that said Hughes Network Systems is a change the world company. They ranked number 10, and the Fortune magazine actually looked at a number of companies throughout the nation, and it's interesting because Hughes was the only company in Maryland to be recognized with this honor. You know, this hurricane was one of the most deadly hurricanes we've seen in the world. And it was really important to see a company step up and say that they're going to do their part to make a difference. And I just wanted to thank them because I couldn't be more proud to have a company who's doing that, who realizes the impact that they can have in utilizing their technology to help someone across the pond to be able to say, hey, you know, we're going to step up and make a difference and help the folks and really make this recovery effort much faster and for a rebuilding effort for them as well. And so I want to present this to you, Dave, and I'm going to read what the proclamation says. But please know that our heartfelt thanks go to you and your company because you get it, and you really are an exemplary, that shining light of what a true corporate partner means and the understanding of what social responsibility is for all of our residents. And so it says, whereas Fortune Magazine's Change the World list highlights companies whose commitment to positive social impact is a visible and an integral aspect of their business structure, and whereas Fortune Magazine utilizes 4 characteristics to assess and rank companies: measurable social impact, the results and degree of innovation and corporate integration, and whereas Hughes Network Systems, LLC, located in Germantown, was selected as a top 10 company, the only one in the state of Maryland, and one of 57 companies worldwide recognized in the 2018 Change the World list. And whereas Hughes is recognized for their disaster relief support unit, who utilized VSATs to enable vital communication in Puerto Rico post-Hurricane Maria, connecting residents, emergency first responders, and medical professionals to life-saving resources. And whereas Hughes is the #1 global VSAT provider and operator of the world's largest satellite internet service. Now, therefore, do we, Isaiah Leggett as County Executive and Hans Riemer as our County Council President, hereby recognize locally headquartered Hughes Network Systems as being the 2018 Fortune Magazine Change the World Top 10 organization for their disaster relief support unit, for their commitment to social impact, and we join your leadership and staff in celebrating your company's accomplishment as signed by our County Executive Isaiah Leggett and by our Council President Hans Riemer this 30th day of October. Congratulations.
That's all right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oops. We'll let you hold this. Councilman Rice, Council, on behalf of the 1,400 employees in the county for Hughes EchoStar, we really do appreciate your recognizing Hughes for their disaster recovery relief efforts. What Councilman Rice probably was all foreign to what he was saying and what we do. I'm guessing most people in this room wouldn't know what a VSAT is if they saw it. However, if it is a way to establish satellite communications when, as Councilman Rice mentioned, that there were no lines left in Puerto Rico. 98% of the population had no service, power, anything. So we're lucky enough to be able to have a service and a technology that could help first responders, that could help medical, that could help doctors, that could establish life-saving communications between FEMA first responders and their corporate headquarters back in Washington. That played a critical role in ensuring that we could get our resources, our supplies, and basic life-saving activities ongoing in Puerto Rico. There are still probably 2-3% of the population without communications. We have put in over 2,000 of these VSAT systems, which are basically think of them as internet kiosks, to allow people to communicate friends, family, and the like. So again, on behalf of Hughes, thank you very much for recognizing us, and we'll try to continue to do our best. Thank you.
We'll take the picture.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice. And now we have a proclamation recognizing National Women's Small Business Month by Councilmember Florine.
Business today. Can I invite the Commission on Women back on down? Jody Finkelstein and crew, and along with Kate Vendemia from the Maryland Women's Business Center and Samara Patel from Rockville Economic Development Incorporated. Busy morning for you. This month, October, is also National Women's Small Business Month. This is a time to celebrate the growth and accomplishments of women entrepreneurs and the vital role they play in our economy. According to the latest American Express State of Women-Owned Business Report from 2018, the growth of women-owned businesses continues at a rapid pace. 4 out of 10 businesses in the United States are now owned by women, and the total number of women-owned businesses, 12.3 million, has increased by 58% since 2007. Isn't that something? It's really cool. According to the Maryland Women's Business Center, and in their report for Montgomery County, their economic outcomes include the information that there are 31 new women-owned business starts, 134 jobs were created and retained, a sales increase of $2.3 million, and an $865,920 worth of capital infusion into our economy. Those of us of this gender are proud to be celebrating this month. And before I turn to comments, let me read the proclamation. The National Women's Business Council established the Women's Small Business Month several years ago to celebrate the growth and accomplishments of female entrepreneurs and the vital role they play in our economy, and to recognize successful women business owners who've been the trailblazers for future female entrepreneurs. And whereas the 2018 American Express State of Women-Owned Business Report estimates, again, the details I went over before, with respect to the women-owned businesses have increased 31 times since 1972. There are now 12.3 million women-owned businesses in the United States, employing 9.2 million people and generating over $1.8 trillion in revenue. And whereas the Rockville Economic Development Corporation, which works to help businesses grow and expand in the city of Rockville, established in 2010 the Rockville Women's Business Center Initiative, later renamed the Maryland Women's Business Center, a nonprofit organization that works to support women entrepreneurs in Montgomery County. And since the MWBC opened its doors, it's served more than 7,000 entrepreneurs, helped start 200 businesses supporting 1,015 jobs, assisted in the increase of $10 million in sales, supported $4.3 million in capital infusion, and added clients in attaining $80 million in contracts. And whereas this month is designed to shine a spotlight on women-owned businesses and to continue to raise awareness and encourage support for women-owned establishments. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland, here proclaims October 2018 as well as National Women's Small Business Month. And we celebrate the rich contributions made by Montgomery County's women-owned small businesses. And we acknowledge the growth and accomplishments of female entrepreneurs and the vital role they play in our economy. Presented on this 30th day of October in the year 2018 and signed by our Council President, Hans Reamer. And so with that, who should I give this to? Everyone. Would I like to make some comments?
On behalf of Kaisha Houghton, the Managing Director of the Maryland Women Business Center, we wanted to thank Councilwoman Florine for her continued support of supporting women entrepreneurs throughout the state of Maryland. Thank you.
Samir, like to say anything?
I just want to say thank you for having us here, and we really appreciate your help. And we also would like to thank Nancy for having us here. Thank you.
More to be said? Sure, come on down.
Just on behalf of the Commission for Women, we, as a commission who promotes the advancement and economic empowerment of women, we are very proud to be a part of this celebration and of the establishment of the Montgomery County Small Business Month, Women's Month.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here, and congratulations to you all for what you're doing. And now we'll have our formal photograph. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And now we will turn to our items of general business. Ms. Lamarzi.
Thank you. Good morning. There is an addendum this morning. As Council President Reamer indicated, there is the introduction of a special appropriation to county government's FY19 operating budget. It's $200,000 for emergency management planning, response, and recovery. A public hearing and action is tentatively scheduled for November 27th at 1:30. Item 16, the district council session has been deleted from today's agenda, and added is a proposed closed session to consider matters that concern the proposal for a business or industrial organization to locate, expand, or remain in the state. The topic before the council is potentially the retention of a certain business in the county. There were no petitions this week.
Okay. Very good. And now we will move to approving the minutes. And if, so if I have your light on, but it's for the consent, great. The minutes for October 9th and 16th of 2018 have been distributed in advance to all council members. Are there any corrections to the minutes? All right, seeing none, those are approved as submitted. And now we will turn to the consent calendar, which has upon it several items relating to economic development, and then a new item that we received from the county executive relating to security in faith institutions. And just want to briefly say that yesterday the council released a statement saying that we cannot let our places of worship become places of fear. And I think that sets the framework for something that's going on in this country today, and our people in our community are increasingly feel that they're being targeted in places of worship. This is across denominations, and this is a real public safety concern. We want our residents to feel safe and protected, and we have a program to support investments in institutions so that they can promote security, and this is a sort of a revision to that approach. But as we are enduring at this time a horrible national climate that is showing up in atrocities and violence at the local level, local government has to respond, and we have to promote safety for our community. And so we will consider this request from the county executive through our regular process. Mr. Leventhal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regarding item F, I certainly appreciate the county executive sending over this request, and we're all shocked and appalled by the events in Pittsburgh. And the money that is spent on improved security at religious facilities is preventative and can save much larger expenditures. I know no one's going to review this on a purely dollars and cents basis, but the more security cameras you have, the more police presence you have, the greater ability to avoid tragic and costly events in the future. But the reason I put my light on was to speak to item A. And I wanted to really thank Carolyn Chen and also Linda Price and Linda McMillan, who did a lot of work writing up the resolution to approve the FY20 council grants process, which will come before this council for a vote on November 14. And I encourage my colleagues to read the two-page resolution. If you have not read it already, I would particularly call to my colleagues' attention at the bottom of page Circle 1 that the council will engage in discussions with the incoming executive about potential changes to the community grants process. Also, I would call to my colleagues' particular attention on Circle 2, Item 3. There's a very new and rather detailed list, a much broader range of topics that the council will entertain grant proposals in. As with other things that we discuss, it will be helpful to council members if there are any amendments to this resolution, if they could be circulated in advance of the November 14th discussion. The community needs to know what it is that we're asking them to do. I just want to say in my closing weeks on the council, it's been my great pleasure to work with Chairwoman Navarro and the other members of the HHS and GO committees on this topic. As I'm on my way out the door, I just want to say that I have spent quite a bit of time and attention on the issue of grant making here for community grants as well as for the arts and humanities. When I arrived, I would say the process lacked integrity, and it was almost entirely political and discretionary. I think we've brought more integrity to it today than it had 16 years ago when I arrived here. I hope that the new generation of council members and the next executive will bring even greater integrity to a process that is vitally important to the partnerships that we enjoy with service providers throughout the county, meeting vital needs and helping people every day. But I think we would all feel better about a process that did a better job of incorporating merit review, that more closely matched the objectives of the executive and council as a single county government. And that's what the community, I think, thinks that we are. I don't think the community really makes the distinction between the legislative branch, the executive branch, et cetera. And so I do encourage the next executive, whosoever that may be, to really engage in bringing more integrity to the process of community grants. I think we'll all feel better about it. We will feel that money is being wisely spent, and you know, looking forward, I'm optimistic about the future of this county. I'm not very optimistic in the near term about substantial increases to our revenue base. So with limited revenue, we've really got to make very, very wise choices with the expenditure of every dollar, including the $12 million or so that are likely to be spent on community grants in the FY20 budget. I think we made a really good start in that direction with the joint committee's work on this. And so I thank my colleagues for allowing me to work on this, even though I've got, I'm on my way out the door. I'm really pleased with the work that's been done so far, and I encourage that work to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Leventhal. I think we all appreciate your work on this. Ms. Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also do, of course, support the introduction of the special appropriation to the county government's FY19 operating budget for the emergency management and planning response. I think it's the right thing to do. We've done this before. Unfortunately, here we are again, but we stand ready to do whatever we can to protect our community. I also do want to take this moment to express my appreciation to the leadership of Councilmember Leventhal with this particular grants process. There is no doubt that as the GO committee members, Councilmember Katz and Reamer, and also the HHS members, Councilmember Rice and Councilmember Leonard, have worked really hard to respond to the needs in our community. I recall how right after the recession, you know, we made an effort to pretty much prioritize safety net services because it was the right thing to do. It was high time that we also take a look at where we are today and how would this process align with many of the very important policy goals and priorities that this council has really discussed and really has, you know, made an effort to support. I do believe that we are very close to a state-of-the-art grants process, that it's not unpredictable, that can be hopefully centralized in some fashion, and that can, in many ways, be transparent enough for our taxpayers to truly understand, you know, how this really aligns with everything that we're looking for. So we had a very rich discussion, and I hope that we can also address issues of, you know, innovative proposals, because that's what this should be all about. But I think this is a really wonderful start to what hopefully in collaboration with the next executive, we can all work to perfect in terms of a process. So again, Councilmember Leventhal, another, you know, great legacy issue for you, and really appreciate working with you.
I will associate myself with Ms. Florine's comments. Thank you.
That was Ms. Navarro.
You would have been better off if you said.
That's the other woman.
That's
I
the
don't
other
know how I
woman.
did that.
I know
was
there's.
looking
I
at
know it's hard.
George, and in the corner of my eye, I saw Nancy Florine, and
I was actually.
I spoke to the first Nancy that I saw.
I was actually at an event this weekend where a state senator said, and now let me introduce Nancy Florine. And then he also said, oh, no, it's Councilman Navarro. She's been a great mentor to me. And I thought, well, Nancy's tend to be interchangeable sometimes.
You are definitely not interchangeable.
and we so
I want
look
you to
alike.
know.
Just the Nancy part.
The name may be interchangeable, that first name. All right. Two Nancys are better than one. All right, so we need a motion for the consent calendar.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Berliner, second by Mr. Rice. All those in favor, show of hands. That is unanimous. And we will move to action on the amendments to the 10-year Comprehensive Water Supply and Sewerage Systems Plan, water and sewer category changes. The T&E Committee has recommended approval of 5 of the 6 changes, and the committee was locked on one of them. And I will turn it to Mr. Berliner and Mr. Levchenko.
Council President, really there are no controversies here except for one item. So on all the other items before us, the county executive, planning, our staff and our committee are all aligned. So we can spend time on those if you'd like. I guess my suggestion to you is, given that there's literally no controversy with respect to those, that we not spend time on those and just focus on the one that there is a controversy with respect to. And that's on, I think it's number 4, if I'm correct, Mr. Levchenko. And on that one, the issue is we have a constituent who has an outlot. She has a home on her own property that she has septic on, and she would like to transfer her right that she otherwise has to have sewer on that property to what is an outlot, which today is not allowed. And it's not allowed because we have a sewer envelope, and we have had a policy that says, actually, we don't want to encourage development on outlots. And so the county executive's position with respect to this matter is to deny it. Our staff's recommendation with respect to this is to deny it. Planning staff's recommendation was to deny it. The planning board, however, was comfortable saying, okay, this seems like a unique situation, we'll say okay to it. So the planning board said okay. The committee was a 1-1 vote. The chair voted supports the county executive and our staff's and planning board staff's recommendation to deny it. Ms. Florine can speak for herself, but she believes that we should approve it. So, Mr. Levchenko and others, Mr. Levchenko, would you like to give more voice to that nature of that particular controversy?
I think you summarized it pretty well. We do have Catherine Nelson from the Planning Department staff here and Alan Sukup from the Executive that can speak to those recommendations. I will note it is helpful perhaps to look at circle page 46, which is a map of the site, to get your bearings on it. And just some brief history about the sewering of this area. The map shows Piney Meeting House Road running immediately to the east of the lots in question. There are 3 lots shown here. The uppermost on the left is the outlot that Mr. Berliner was referencing. You also have a property immediately to the east of it, which called Lot 1, Block D. And then you have the property to the south, which is Lot 2, Block D. The applicant actually owns Lot 2, Block D. And that does have a right, if you will, to an abutting main, which would be along Piney Meeting House Road. However, the properties to the north, Outlot A and Lot 1, originally were part of the same parcel. And that parcel had the right to one hookup to the Piney Meeting House Road main. And when it's subdivided, the lot closer to, or the lot immediately adjacent to Piney Meeting House Road developed on sewer. And so that was the one lot, or the one connection allowed. The outlot was part of the subdivision, and as you can see, it does have a pipe stem frontage to Piney Meeting House Road that was presumably done at the time in order to, if the opportunity presented itself someday, to connect. However, as Mr. Berliner mentioned, the abutting mains policy does not have a provision to transfer an abutting mains right from one property to another, with the exception of the two at the top, that if that other one had not developed yet and it had been a part of the original parcel, that could have been transferred to the back of the parcel, if you will. But once again, you would be basically having one connection to that parcel, which is what we now have. So there is no provision in the current policy to allow a transfer from an unrelated lot to that lot. That's why staff and the executive had recommended denial. Ms. Nelsons can speak to the planning board recommendation. I think in that case, they did look at it in a unique context and heard the applicant's request and felt that in that particular case they were willing to go forward with it. So that's sort of where we are. Mr. Hucker was absent from the meeting, so we had a 1-1 vote. So in this particular issue, as for this item, we've included language that would implement either of those options so that the council can take action today and we have language ready to go in either circumstance. Ms. Nelson, do you want to speak to the planning board?
Thank you. The planning board did feel that the transfer of the right to a single connection would not substantially change the character of the area, and that building a house in that location would not be problematic. There was also at the hearing support that perhaps a method for transferring the right could be crafted just for this instance.
Okay. We have some council member comments and questions. Mr. Rice.
So I guess my question is for both Mr. Levchenko and Mr. Sukup, and so I'll just start with Mr. Sukup. Hearing what the planning board has said, do you have an objection to that based on the fact that they said it wouldn't change the character of the area and we are just talking about a single individual area?
Well, our recommendation,
parcel.
The recommendation itself stands.
Sure.
We've not modified it. However, we worked with council staff, with Keith, to develop language, which we discussed with the planning board, that would hopefully limit the precedent being set and also require some assurance that a house can actually be built on the outlot. That's something that we have a concern about.
Okay.
But clearly, if the council's will is to allow this change to occur, we will work with the applicants and with Park and Planning to implement that process.
Okay. So, Mr. President, I'm not sure if the appropriate time is now to move forward with a recommendation to actually do what Mr. Sukup was saying in terms of using that alternate language. I've always been one who's tried to certainly err on the side of giving sewer to those who need it. I know the challenges associated with my folks in the Clarksburg Historic District, and we fought so long, and I'm going to be very happy to be celebrating us bringing sewer to that area. I know what it means for individuals. I also understand the ramifications of what it means from a development aspect, and so if there's language that staff has been able to craft that makes this a unique circumstance, I think that it's the right thing for us to do, and so I would like to move that we go in that direction.
All right, we have a motion that has been moved and seconded. Discussion to that. Mr. Leventhal.
Yeah, I just want to clarify the status of the 3 parcels. So on Circle 46, the home has been built on septic. Is that the bottom one?
Yeah, on Circle 46, yeah,
Right.
the lower home,
one has been built on
it's
septic.
built
and-
on septic.
And the upper right has been built also on septic?
On sewer.
That one's been built on sewer.
That one is the one
So
that,
they had the right to one sewer connection for the entire property. They utilized it for the upper right one, and now they want to build another home behind that.
Yeah, the original parcel covered the two upper properties, not the lower one. The two upper properties were part of the same parcel that was subdivided. The property closer to Piney Meeting House Road took advantage of the single connection opportunity.
And to Mr. Sukup's comment about we don't know if a house can be built, are we saying we don't know if a house can be built in the upper left parcel, whether it's sewer or septic?
That's correct. We've developed language here that would require the applicant to submit what we call a concept plan to the Development Review Committee for their evaluation. And it's that this approval would be conditioned on essentially concurrence from the DRC that a house can be built on that location.
And Mr. Rice, you would envision that assurance being included in your motion? Okay, thank you, I yield.
Mr. Elrich.
So I support Mr. Blenner's position on this. We just went through a very difficult discussion about where we were going to extend, where we might extend sewer. And we were very clear we weren't going to allow people to take advantage of the extension of sewer, then to subdivide their properties and extend sewer to properties that otherwise weren't eligible to get it. You set this precedent here, and then everybody else is going to ask, why not me? And I think that creates a problem. And I don't know what the planning board was thinking. I think staff got it right. I think everybody else got it right except the planning board. I mean, you create this exception, and you're going to have a hard time arguing that anybody else doesn't have the same problem. And creating a pipe stem lot was, I don't know if they thought I don't know when they created, you don't have a date on when this lot was created. But you have no way of knowing whether, I don't have any way of knowing whether that back lot's developable or not, and whether they could actually septic it. But if they could put a septic back there or any other alternative that the county or the state approves, there's still a way to develop it. And I will remind people, if the argument of people, if the proponents of sewer are right, that my God, we have to look at every septic lot today and wonder about what's the limited life of that septic lot, when am I going to have to put sewer there? Are they going to have to come back and reclaim the sewer for the lot they didn't use? And then essentially we've put two sewer connections where only one was intended. So I don't see any reason to allow this. Every other property here could put a pipe stem, given the size of their lots, and create the exact same situation. And the argument would be, it wouldn't make any, it doesn't change the character, so all of a sudden, any of these things could be changed. And I just don't see the reason for doing it. So I'm going to vote with Mr. Blenner on this. I think he got it right.
All right. Thank you for introducing a new word to my vocabulary, the pipe stem lot. That is, I hadn't heard that before. That's a good one. I didn't say it was new to you. I just said it was new to me. All right. I said my vocabulary.
Say that he agrees with Mr. Berliner was the new.
Mr. Berliner.
Can you visualize it when you look at the lot as a pipe stem?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's quite clear. Ms. Florine. No, wait. Yeah.
You got it right.
He's gun shy.
Nice.
He's gun
Right.
I'm trying.
Thank you. Well, I would make this into a major issue. If you look at Circle 46, what we understood was that lot could have sewer. It chose not to use it. So the property owner simply wants to transfer that right to the adjacent piece of land. So I don't think this is a federal case. I think it is a unique case, particularly because that lower lot, I'm sure people would, it's over 8.5 acres. It certainly is adding a lovely feature to this community. And I think the trade-offs are not inappropriate given the situation. That's why we do this. We look at each case, and you all make a call as to what's right for that particular and unique instance, and that's what the planning board did in this case, apparently, and I support it.
Thank you. Mr. Berliner.
Just the final word. It's my understanding that there's enough property on the lot that's currently served by septic that it could subdivide and they could have sewer on that lot. but that the owner would prefer not to because she would like her horses on that lot and would like to develop a home where actually she doesn't have the authority for sewer. So from my perspective, I appreciate that she loves horses and she'd prefer to have the horses someplace else, but I don't think that's a compelling reason to justify going forward in this manner when there are other options available to the owner.
All right. Mr. Rice?
Just to close, let me just say this, and I want to reiterate what Councilmember Florine said. I mean, this is a unique situation, and so, you know, Councilmember Elrich saying setting precedent. I mean, we look at each of these individually, just as the planning board does, just as staff does. We don't. Precedent is only in your own mind in terms of saying, oh, well, this is we are not the judicial system. Let me be very clear. And just because we decide one thing this way, we've gone the exact opposite way in plenty of other things right here on this dais in my 8 years. So that's not true. So again, this is about us trying to decide in this individual situation whether or not, and we want to try and make it easier for folks. Again, if this isn't, and here's the thing. I understand, Councilmember Berliner, what you're saying, and you would prefer it to be a certain way, but I thought that we were in the business of trying to make it easier for our constituents to do things, right? As long as it didn't adversely affect our community. And I think Planning Board did that in saying that it wasn't changing the character of the area. I wrote it down because it was incredibly important because, again, that's what we're looking at this as. We're not looking to be restrictive to our community. We're not looking to be limiting to our community. We're trying to support our community in the things that they want to do and embrace that. We want to be supportive of them. I don't want to stand in the way and be an obstacle for them, as long as it's not destroying the character of our community, as long as it's not doing something that's going to be a detriment to the surrounding community or the environment. None of those things are the argument here. I haven't heard a single person say, oh, well, that's the argument. This is going to destroy the environment. This is going to destroy the character of the neighborhood. So then why are we saying no? Just to say no? Well, I'm not in that business.
All right, thank you. Mr. Elrich?
I would like to point out that the staff used the word precedent. And I take the precedent seriously. I honestly do not believe that you would not make the exact same argument in a number of other places, including the area we just had that long, multi-month, if not multi-year discussion about whether or not to extend the sewer. And somebody could easily come in and say on those large lots, you're not changing the character of anything. Why did we go through the trouble of saying you can't subdivide these properties to take advantage if you're going to get the sewer? We made that argument.
All right. And there's a motion before us. Is this a show of hands, Megan? Right. We do have a motion and right, it's amendment, so a show of hands. All those in favor, raise your hands. And that is Mr. Leventhal, Ms. Florine, and Mr. Rice. All those opposed. And that is 6-3. All right, and now to the full package. And is the committee recommendation sufficient to be a motion? Right. It's been amended. All those in favor, raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Okay.
Yeah, just to clarify, since we had both languages in that one request, we would be presuming now to use the language, it's option 1 on circle page B2. So we don't want to have to recraft language and bring it back.
I think we want you to use the language that's consistent with our vote.
Right, correct. That's what we're doing.
Yes, good. This is not that hard. All right, thank you. It's always important to check. Thank you for that. And now we will turn to work session and action on a few items that we decided to take to full council rather than go through committee. So the first of those is a special appropriation to the county government's FY19 operating budget for $225,000 from the Economic Development Fund. And
there's one item before that.
oh, I'm sorry. Action on a resolution to approve declaration of no further need, disposition of land adjacent to 5920 Massachusetts Avenue in Bethesda. And the Public Safety Geo Committee recommendation is before us. Mark.
Simple decision here. The county acquired some property. The property is needed by the fire station for rebuilding and expanding the facility there. It was pretty simple. It was 3-0 recommendation from committee.
All right, I think this one's an easy one. Any discussion? All right, this is
6-0.
6-0, right. So this is a show of hands. All those in favor of the committee recommendations? Oh, that's unanimous. Okay. All right, thank you. Go forth and build.
Highly controversial.
A special appropriation to the county government's FY19 operating budget, $225,000 for the Economic Development Fund. Gene Smith.
Sure. This is pretty straightforward. The SBIR, STTR matching grant program council created this year, appropriated $425,000, and that was spent very quickly on small businesses in the county and the biotech industry. This would help round out the amount available to businesses that didn't receive grants or received partial grants. There's only one minor note the council staff makes, which is that given how the program is designed, 50-50 gets split between the phase 1 and phase 2. Seeing that all phase 2s have qualified for the maximum $75,000, the $225,000 appropriation before the council would receive a partial, or would have a remainder of a partial $25,000 grant for phase 2. I think that's a very minor issue. Staff says you can go one way or the other, but $225 works perfectly fine, because every dollar in the EDF is a dollar for our small business.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Leventhal.
Well, thanks. I want to thank my colleagues for their support for this initiative to provide, really, I call it a attaboy or attagirl for a company that has been recognized by NIH as deserving of federal support for its effort to commercialize basic research in a small business. We all know that this biotechnology sector is something we really want to encourage. I think that this program is entirely consistent with the purposes of the Economic Development Fund, and we know, as with later this afternoon, we're being asked for a closed session, that additional Economic Development Funds requests come up over the course of the year. I'm aware of the issue that Mr. Smith has raised. I've made the judgment not to ask my colleagues either to increase or to reduce the special appropriation as it was introduced, which got a lot of support when it was introduced, and I would encourage the next executive and next council to continue to monitor this carefully, and if there are a lot of companies lined up for which there aren't sufficient funds, I really do think this is a worthy purpose. It's unprogrammed money, so companies can use it for whatever their next most urgent need is. They can pay for insurance, they can pay for build out of a new lab, they can pay for a vehicle, they can pay for a lot of things that enable them to continue to grow and thrive and create jobs and bring products to market that will cure disease and alleviate suffering. So this is a worthy purpose, but I'm not asking to change the dollar amount, but I do think that it's likely that before the end of this fiscal year, elected officials in this county may want to revisit this again and maybe put more money in if that is their judgment.
Thank you, Mr. Leventhal. I think I know, speaking for myself, I look forward to taking this issue up going forward. I appreciate what you've done here. You've really developed a good policy that is clean and simple and transparent and speaks to the value of one of our really dynamic economic sectors that we want to see grow. So thank you.
Oh, I guess I have to move it. Yeah, please. Yeah. So I move the special appropriation.
All right, it has been, that's right, because these items have not
It
had
did not go through committee.
So it's been moved by Mr. Leventhal, second by Mr. Rice. And this is a show of hands. All right, Mr. Elrich, your light is on, but all those in favor, show of hands. And that is unanimous. Very good. And now we will turn to the next item, special appropriation to the county government's FY19 operating budget, $200,000 for the Economic Development Fund, Small Business Assistance Program. And we need a motion. Mr. Elrich has moved it. Ms. Navarro has seconded. And Mr. Smith.
Sure, not to confuse this program with the other SB programs we have in the Economic Development Fund. This program has been supporting Wheaton businesses currently where the Wheaton redevelopment program is in action. There were two items that staff noted, and Ms. Navarro also spoke about it during the public hearings. One item is related to the $75,000 max that currently is in the executive regulation. The council needs to not take any action on that because that will be a process that the executive would need to consider amending, and the future council could certainly work with the future executive to amend that and to consider what option or what amount is best. The second one is clearly the businesses are receiving benefit from this. It's hard to know how much is needed through fiscal 19. $200,000 is perfectly is a good option for now as we continue to monitor the program because it's only been in action for about 6 months. And so I think trying to find the right point where the appropriation is correct is a little hard right now, and I think this continues the program far into the budget season of next year. Other than that, council staff recommends approval.
Very good. Ms. Navarro, I know our council vice president has done a fantastic job putting this issue on our agenda and bringing it forward time and time again, and here we are today to consider this appropriation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for supporting this particular special appropriation request. Of course, we all remember that this was introduced first in 2012 and really grew out of the concerns and the feedback from small businesses in the community in Wheaton, but really this is for any particular revitalization and redevelopment project that is initiated by county government. So I think it's a very good template considering what we were discussing earlier about the Purple Line. This particular request, it's so that we can continue to have some disbursements made. It took a little while to get it off the ground, but about $439,500 has been dispersed thus far. And I think that businesses are finally really feeling that the county is there to provide whatever assistance is necessary for them to survive. And I think this can be really a model for many other jurisdictions as well. I will point out that this issue of the $75,000 limit is something that definitely want to address with the incoming executive. So if my colleagues don't object, I think that we should have ready a memo to send right after we know who the next executive will be in order to address this particular issue. Other than that, I really do appreciate everybody's support.
Thank you. Mr. Elrich.
I second Nancy's discussion there. I think that particularly the cap, it'd be kind of crazy to go in for 75 and then have a business fail because we can't continue to assist them for impacts that they can actually document. So I think we need to look at changing that. Hopefully whoever the next executive is will do that. But this program in general, I think, has been really helpful. I think we would have suffered some serious business loss over there if we weren't providing assistance.
Very good. And we have a motion that has been seconded. All those in favor, show of hands. And that is unanimous. And now we have a work session on an item related to accessory dwelling units. And this is a resolution to enact rules of procedure that are consistent with the intent of a zoning text amendment that was passed previously by the council. And this is a resolution to approve rules of procedure for agency referral and accessory apartment cases heard by the Office of Zoning and Administrative Hearings. Mr. Zients, you're here, but Marty will give us the overview.
Good morning, Mr. President. These are new rules proposed to handle, for one, agency referral matters that have not been governed specifically by OZA rules previously, and also new rules to govern the accessory apartment waiver and objection procedures, which were passed by the council a week or two ago and now part of the law. And so that will enable us to better advise people of what our procedures are in these kinds of cases.
Okay, that was scintillating. We need a motion, I think, and a second. And it's been moved by Ms. Florine, second by Mr. Rice. And, or maybe that was the reverse, but I just called it that way. Mr. Elrich.
So I'd like you to elaborate on your scintillating discussion there. I haven't heard any issues raised regarding the accessory apartments, but people have raised issues about the necessity of doing this more broadly. because I thought the purpose of this bill originally was to deal with the accessory issue. So can you explain what this means in the broader sense?
I can. My office, the Office of Zoning and Administrative Hearings, receives referrals not just relating to land use matters, which are governed by a set of rules already, and not just in the accessory apartment area, but also from agencies such as the Commission on Human Rights, the CCOC, the Chief Administrative Officer, the Merit System Protection Board, the Board of Registration, for a variety of different matters. And although they are broadly covered by the Administrative Procedures Act, we always have to amplify our procedures for the cases that are before us with lengthy orders that set forth our procedures in specifics. And so this will give people notice of what our specific requirements are. They range everything from whether or not discovery matters are filed with us or kept with folks before they come in, to filing electronic copies, things that are not covered expressly by the Administrative Procedures Act.
So have these other issues other than accessories been exciting and engendered lots of involvement, or is this pretty much not going to alter people's universe of experience?
I don't think it'll alter the universe of experience. There aren't a huge number of these cases, but we do get them. The most frequent ones recently have been from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding prevailing wage law cases, which generally involve contractor, subcontractor, and the county. We have gotten in the past numerous cases from the Commission on Human Rights, that is discrimination cases that have not been resolved in the Office of Human Rights or with the Commission, and are referred to us for hearings. And also the CCOC, we get disputes between associations and their constituents. So this governs that broad area of cases that are not that frequent, but we do get them.
And on the generalized zoning, this only affects the accessory apartment side of that. You have other rules.
That's correct. This does not affect the zoning rules at all.
This is,
Yes.
pardon my attire here. This is
Something
a
wrong with it?
licensing procedure as opposed to a zoning
Okay.
matter.
Yeah.
So these are things that are referred over under DHCA's licensing requirements.
I just wanted people who are listening to this and actually paying attention to this to be relieved, of the fear that this somehow is a broad-based change to how all zoning. I mean, this is what I'm getting in emails, so I just want to make sure that folks know that's not what's involved in this.
Mr. Leventhal.
It is, I think, important to clarify at this point that the emails we are receiving about a change to OZAH procedure are not referring to agenda item number 7. We're receiving multiple emails in opposition to a change which the council president has deleted from the council's agenda. That's what the emails are about. The emails were in response to a proposal from Mr. Grossman, which would have allowed for the batching and expediting of cell tower applications. That is not agenda item number 7. There, indeed. But no, that's correct. That's exactly right. So it was going to be agenda item number 16B, and the council president has deleted that. That's what we're getting the emails about.
Right. Okay, so now it's time to vote, and this is a show of hands. All those in favor, raise your hands. And that is unanimous. All right, that completes those items, and now we will move, regrettably 45 minutes behind, but better late than never. We have an update on early child care and education. Early care and education. And we have expected here Director Alawalia, Joanne Barnes, Maria Navarro, Deanna Collins, and our council staff lead is Vivian Yao. And our objective here is to get an overview, an update. There's been a lot of progress, a lot of development in this arena. We're excited about what's happening. We want to hear about it. and we want to just generally discuss what we think are priority next steps. And I will turn it to Vivian Yao. There she is.
We have some PowerPoint slides coming up. The council is going to receive an update on early care and education topics from representatives from the Department of Health and Human Services and Montgomery County Public Schools. As you all know, there's been a lot of interest in expanding early childhood services in the county, not only by the council, but by community-based initiatives like Montgomery Moving Forward. The council will hear updates on pre-K in the county, the current commission's work on pre-K, changes to the state and local child care subsidy programs, and the recently issued cost of quality care report that the Department of Health and Human Services commissioned. In your packet, later on, council staff recommends that the council schedule a follow-up discussion in early 2019 about options for expanding child care and education services. At this time, hopefully more may be known about the fiscal impact of the state child care subsidy program changes and its impact on the local program, as well as the status of Kerwin Commission's recommendations and also policy directions from the new executive. This discussion could inform development of the fiscal year 20 operating budget. Also, in considering expanding or improving early care and education services, council staff has listed some considerations on page 10 of your packet. So having said that, I think what we had scheduled was the pre-K update first, which is through MCPS, but I didn't know if MCPS and DHS had decided the order of presentations.
Dr. Navarro.
Good afternoon, County Council members. I am joined with Dr. Collins to provide you updated information from MCPS in terms of our numbers of supports for students in early childhood, and to be able to open up any questions that you have. I just wanted to point out that, as Ms. Yao said, we are watching both at the state level with the Kerwin Commission, the implications for the school system, locally as well, as you have conversations about how we move forward, and working with HHS, Montgomery Moving Forward as a local a body very interested in this topic, and so we are very eager to continue the conversation with county council members moving forward. I'm going to turn it to Dr. Collins to go through some of our data for you to review. Thank you.
Good morning. Afternoon. No, it's still morning. Close. Good. So just an update. Overall, one of the things that's important to point out is that for our pre-kindergarten programs, they are rolling enrollment, and so our enrollment fluctuates quite a bit. What we are seeing recently actually is the immigration status of our families has been impacting some of our families. We had a family actually last week in one of our full-day programs decide to unenroll because of fear of having to complete an application. We've also had a few instances in the past and also recently where some of our families that are in our full day program have decided the day might be a little bit too long, so they want to go back to try out a half day program, which is fine. So I think overall the nice thing is that we have options for families to meet various needs, and so the enrollment that you're seeing is a point in time that because we are always enrolling families, but we have space and we never turn them away. Just in terms of the full day programs that we have, just as an update, all of our full day programs are fully enrolled. We also added 2 full day sections from state funded Maryland State Department of Ed funds to Summit Hall and Rolling Terrace. Those 2 sections are also fully enrolled. And then McDonald Knowles, which is our early learning center, is also fully enrolled. If you, just for recapping, it is our early learning center that has 4 classrooms that have 15 students in each class that are general education students, and then 5 students in each of those classes are students that have individualized education plans. And then on that site, we also have one class, it's a 3-year-old class that has a morning section and an afternoon section. Again, that's rolling enrollment. And those are all students that have gone through meetings to receive an individual education plan. McDonald Knowles also has a full-time coordinator. The teachers are full-time, has a full-time art, music, and physical education teacher, ESOL support, a full-time parent educator that supports parent engagement, as well as a full-time special educator, health tech, and nurse support, building service. So it functions as a school. And it's co-located with the ARC Montgomery, which has been a great partnership. So we coordinate fire drills, safety protocols, parent engagement, and things of that nature. For back to school night, I'd had a back to school night like a normal school. It was out of our 98 families, we had about 67 parents show up on a rainy night. That was great. We were also started running a social emotional class. You may know of CEFL, but it's a parent engagement class as well. And the first session was last week. There are about six or seven sessions for CEFL, and our attendance has been well attended. So the parent engagement staff member at the school plays a really integral role, not just around the parent engagement at that site, but also as we collaborate with HHS staff as well. In terms of our summer programs that were held this summer, we had a total of 180 children attend. By the end of the program, we did have about 4 or 5 children that were not able to attend the program anymore, but it was well attended. We had Kinder Music, which is a music program that was part of the curriculum, as well as Creative First, which is an enrichment engagement curriculum around literacy and language development. Was very good because it promoted language development for those students. So we're hoping that we will have additional funds to expand the summer school program. If you recall, through the support of the county council, we added a class. In adding classes, we were able to have enough money to add a class to Arcola. And the nice thing is that Arcola is going to be one of our extended school year schools. We're adding 30 additional days. So Arcola, as well as Roscoe Nix Elementary, which also has a pre-K program, those students will benefit from the additional 30 school days, full day at those schools. And at Roscoe Nix, they also have an autism program, which again is a special education program. So again, instead of the extended school year program in the summer, they'll have access to a full year of program as well. So overall, we are excited about the summer programs. We will continue to expand and find partnerships. We're finding that what's nice is that it just is not about school academics, but it's about family, the whole wraparound piece, as well as time for the families to come in and to learn about how do you help your child transition to kindergarten, what kinds of questions should you be asking, what should you be looking for in the classroom, and again, that social emotional piece that's just as important as the academic skills that the children have. And this is in terms of expansion. While we have spent a great deal of funding in our time expanding our general education classrooms, we have also been focusing on the expansion with our students with disabilities and have found that to be very promising. So we're not moving away from expansion to full day for general education, but we are really looking at how can we expand to increase more of our inclusion classroom, so to speak, for next year. So we're currently looking at spaces where we might have already a preschool education program for students with disabilities and special education, as well as a general education class for preschool, and how we can expand on that work as well. So again, we're looking at facility options and things of that nature. We are really trying to study the McDonald Knowles model because our goal would be to expand, but we want it to become a site that is sort of the hub where you can have other teachers come observe to see high quality early childhood experiences, talk with staff and things of that nature. So we're trying to learn from the work that we're doing at McDonald Knowles, as well as our other sites where we have general education and special education students located together in our half day, but also our full day programs. And we're actually seeing the benefits when you walk in our classrooms, you can't tell which students have individual education plans at all. It's really a co-teaching model with our teachers. It's been an exciting opportunity. So as far as expansion, that's what we're looking at. And as Dr. Navarro mentioned, we're watching the Kerwin Commission report as well.
As are we all. Fantastic. That was a terrific presentation. Is it time for a discussion now, you think? Okay, good. Councilmember Elrich.
So this seems to be pretty heavily focused on the school system in terms of data. Am I right? So what's the bigger picture? Because we know the schools aren't going to be responsible and can't be responsible providing the entire backbone of early childhood. So, I mean, if I read this just in a cursory way, you've got 12,600, depending on the day, say 12,600 kids who are in the 4-year-old category, and we are serving somewhere around 3,200 of them, which means 9,400 aren't being served in schools, but I know some number of that are being served in private programs. And so the lift for the county is to look at a combination of, we'll look at what's the missing delta here in terms of the number of people we need to serve. Because, I mean, frankly, over 3 years, this is not much growth. I mean, it's from FY17, it was about 3,166 students, and in FY19, it's 3,322, so it's like a growth of about 160 students.
I think with the more of the growth that you would see that we did in the last few years was to bringing half-day slots to full day. So we
Right.
did actually increase a lot there, but yes, in terms of reaching out to more kids, there hasn't been, as much growth there to bring new kids into programs.
Well, I mean, it's the same 648 kids. There were 340 full-day slots and 340 half-day slots. Now there are 540 full-day slots and 108 half-day slots. Nothing's grown except the number of people getting full-day, but the total number of kids getting served after 3 years is still 648.
And I think part of that is, my sense is that, when you have, the school system is required to serve 185% poverty. What they've done is to open half-day pre-K for the most part for those kids. The research that OLO has done and a lot of folks understand is that if you're going to get good outcomes from pre-K, it would be through full-day programs. So I think the goal has been to move the kids that are, low income into those full-day programs. So I think that's been the priority for the council. But you're correct, there hasn't been more expansion in half-day programs because we've kind of we've reached the kids that can access those half-day programs.
So
A lot of families can't access just half-day programs and make it work for their
I guess I'm
schedules.
just puzzled why this analysis only does the school system and doesn't do the broader picture. Because we're going to be left with addressing the broader picture, and this, I mean, I'm baffled what that is based on this.
So today's conversation, sorry, for the record, I'm Uma Luwalia, the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services. Talk too fast. Today's conversation was more in the nature of an update. We did a full briefing back in April where we had presented options in 20 children increments of what it would cost. We can certainly revisit those estimates at a future date, but today I think there is so much happening in this space between WPA changes, childcare subsidy changes at the state and the Kerwin Commission and MMF strategies and rolling out the early childhood strategic plan. There's just a very comprehensive set of efforts that are underway that we're happy to update you on today. But in terms of sort of specific cost options, I think the best document I can point you to would be the April conversation that we had. We can bring that back for a future conversation whenever council is ready for that discussion. I imagine we'd want a new executive in place for that conversation, but we're happy to come back and have a fuller conversation on that. But today, what we are coming forward with is to sort of update you on some of those changes that are going to be impacting the subsidy environment, at least from Health and Human Services. We wanted to bring some of those forward to you.
At the risk of saying it again, I just wish it had been just a comprehensive overview, if only to discuss the need. I mean, I didn't need a detailed per 20 kids cost, but I can't tell. I mean, if somebody was just looking at this report, you wouldn't know comprehensively who's getting child care services. You would only know really who's getting child care services in the school, and you wouldn't know what the missing piece is. And that's what I was looking for.
We can get you that information, though. We can get you that information after, at least to the extent that it is known to us in terms of how many providers, what kind of slots are available, who's getting subsidies. And then there's this large, incalculable universe of kids who are either taken care of in informal care settings. That we've struggled with this projection question. Gosh, I'm looking at Mrs. Navarro. I don't know, this feels like a 6-year conversation, if not longer.
Yes.
Right? Where we've been trying to say, how do we project need? And so we have used some consulting time to try to get to a better place on that question. I don't think we will be able to give you very accurate numbers down to, within a range of 10 or so, but we will try and give you some broad projections just based on birth rates and things like that. We can sort of come up with some estimates, and that's the best we've been doing, and we'll get those back out to you.
I mean, I do appreciate the numbers from the state, because it looks like the state's going to be stepping up more over a 4-year period, theoretically. And yes, all this is in theory, but they did, outline a plan. And when I was at Montgomery moving forward, they talked about the state ramp up from a very low subsidy to a higher subsidy, and put that in the context of our problem with people not taking advantage of the low subsidy because they don't have the money to pay the delta. I mean, giving somebody who's got to spend $20,000 a year, 15% of the cost, if you're in a low income bracket, I mean, they're probably yawning at that and say, I can't handle the difference. Thanks for the hand, but it's not really worth anything. Anyway, I'm looking forward to hopefully, Craig is shaking his head, but hopefully the state does what it says it's going to do. And that makes our lift, either a little bit more difficult, or it gives us the ability to take our dollars and spread them a little bit further. But again, I guess we'll get a more comprehensive view of this. Thank you.
All right, I just want to comment briefly and then pass it on. I think that the report does highlight our success, which is that the number of 4-year-old children in high-quality, publicly funded full-day programs has more than doubled, going from 585 to 1,283. That's a lot. There have been communities around the country. I think of Santa Fe. They pursued a universal pre-K. They created 1,000 slots, and they got headlines, national headlines. We've added nearly 1,000 full-day slots. Now, a lot of that's moving part day to full day, but it's very significant, and it wasn't cheap. And I think that while this may not be a comprehensive report, I don't think we need that. I think what this report identifies is that the incremental steps we're making are getting results, and there is a way to continue making them. And we keep working our way towards the goal. And the school system's very strong participation here is making a huge difference. I really want to, of course, commend Councilmember Navarro and Councilmember Rice and the members of the Ed Committee. All of them have really encouraged this shift, but for MCPS to say, we're going to make early education a priority. We're taking this on, and we got a vision here. We're working our way towards the goal. We're going to provide quality care for kids, especially kids who are disadvantaged, who can't afford it. that is the way forward. And so we just need to continue to do that. And, you know, the memo here says if we were to go to 300% of the federal poverty line with full-day pre-K for all remaining 4-year-olds, that would be $32 to $38 million. It would be nice, Vivian, do you know what would be the amount if it's just 185% of the federal poverty line?
I don't know off the top of my
Don't
head,
know.
but we could certainly provide that pretty quickly.
I think it would be helpful for us to focus our sight in on a more manageable goal here, you know, where we could potentially close that gap in a year or two with a strong county funding commitment. But 300% of federal poverty is that's actually, I think, in the middle class. I mean, a family of 4, federal poverty is like 40. What is it, Vivian? What's the family of 4?
I believe 300% of poverty is around 75,000 of a family of 4.
So it's below the self-sufficiency standard, so it's not, I guess you wouldn't call that middle class.
Yeah, it's
But, right, but it is, in any event, it takes a lot of money to get to 300% of federal poverty level. That's the bottom line. So let's bite off what we can chew and continue to make these steps forward. And, I think this report highlights that when we as a council say, let's work with the school system all together, let's do what we can, let's make progress, that we get results, we're getting real results. And, these kids are going to hopefully have more success all through their academic careers and so on. So anyway, I have additional comments I'll reserve. Ms. Navarro.
Thank you. Well, we have been working with the school system for many years. Actually, when Centernia came to Montgomery County, it was because of a collaboration with the school systems to release some slots into the community. So this is work that has been going on for a very long time. I wanted to understand, and I agree, I know that we have incoming, hopefully, council members after November 6th who are very interested in this topic. Obviously, we're going to have a new executive, and hopefully I'll become president in December, and it is my goal to schedule a comprehensive work session so that we can really, truly take stock of where we are and where we need to go, because this notion of all the different efforts that are taking place right now, which is really wonderful that there's so much energy around early care and education. The reality is going to always come down to resources. And when we're looking at our fiscal outlook, we know that things are going to be very tight. So one of the main reasons I wanted to appoint a high-level policy officer was so that somebody could really own this issue and have the most strategic proposals in case we had some funding coming our way. We could then play with different scenarios. So I'm looking forward to that particular kind of approach, because if we are not super highly targeted and strategic, we're just going to fall back to the same old pattern that we have been sort of stuck in Montgomery County, except that now the numbers are so stark. So I wanted to ask a question of page 2 on the top. There are some data points regarding kindergarten readiness, and it does state that the county's rate is higher than the state average. However, 11 Maryland counties have higher readiness rates. I'm sorry, I can't concentrate. Than the county. So it states that in Montgomery County, young children from low-income households, 25% are ready for school. Children who are English language learners, 21% are ready for school. And children with identified disability, 14% ready for school. How does that compare to previous years? Because if I'm looking at that, I'm obviously pretty startled.
I actually think there's probably a typo there. I think it's not ready for school, are those percentages.
25% are not ready for school? Is that what you were trying to say? I'm sorry.
So our data from the kindergarten readiness assessment, we are about 49% of MCPS students enter kindergarten fully ready for kindergarten. I cannot recall the partial readiness, but I know it's somewhere around.
That
Okay, I'm just reading verbatim what it says here on top of page 2.
That's probably
just-
accurate, sorry.
So
Sorry about that.
so when you disaggregate that 49% by English language learners and low-income children and children with disability, are you saying that that is not correct?
No, that is correct, sorry. yeah.
Okay. So for me, this really is what triggers my belief in why we need to be targeted, because it also has to do with the bottom line in terms of resources. I mean, we understand that these are children who require quite a bit of remediation and support, and the school system has worked so tirelessly to provide that. So to avoid, basically, this issue. And so we here know where we need to target the resources if we're going to have an early care and education strategy. It's right here in black and white. This is where we need to start. I also think that, and I assume we're going to work through the packet, but I also think that we need to, when we come back for an update, have a much more thorough report on the innovative strategies. I know there is some mention here on the co-location, for example. We heard from one of the summer fellows. I had an opportunity to visit one of those centers in Seattle that was mentioned by our summer fellows. I had, a 3-hour tour and conversation with the director. So I think we have opportunities here, and I'm happy to share. Vivian, I know it wasn't in the packet. Perhaps you didn't know that I had spent all that time there, but we have some opportunities here to replicate. Maybe not exactly the same, but I think that there are some elements that we can incorporate. And I know that I personally am looking forward to that type of guidance from the policy officer, from MCPS, from you, Vivian, so that we can understand and have a menu of options. Ultimately, I think what we need to do, obviously, is work towards our dedicated funding stream. That's what we need to do. And I was looking at Councilmember Rice drinking coconut water this morning, and I was laughing because when we had the sugar drink conversation, I used to say we should just tax coconut water because Montgomery County is so healthy. But joking aside, this is something that we really do need to start thinking about for the future, for the near future. Because if not, we're just really working on the margins. If I'm looking at that data point, I am realizing that we have a big lift, and I'm hoping that the Kerwin Commission will obviously give us some, tangible resources. But it is a big lift for us, and so I want to work towards really seriously. Montgomery moving forward is looking at this really seriously, realizing how we can braid some funding mechanisms and have that dedicated funding stream so we can really get to it versus just continuing to work in the margins and just do a little bit here and a little bit there. But I'll wait for the rest of the packet to ask some other questions, and really thank you for all the work that you've done. But I think we're in the cusp of some major leadership changes. I think it's an exciting time to really take this on full-fledged with this new administration. Thank you.
Mr. Rice.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Council Vice President Navarro, for your comments. I really think that they're incredibly important when it comes to framing where we are and where I think that we're headed. I have a unique perspective being on the Kerwin Commission, and have had a chance to meet with a majority of the stakeholders for early childhood education and early childhood care for these past couple of years. And, a testament to the work that I've done over those past 2 years is on Circle 8 through 20, which are those recommendations from the Kerwin Commission. But let me just say this, and I want to summarize basically what those multitude of pages mean. What it basically is saying is that the state should step up and create a robust full-day pre-K program so that individual jurisdictions can innovate and do some of the unique things that we've seen in addition to that state baseline. And so, Mr. President, I echo your comments about the great accomplishments that we've had here in Montgomery County. We've stepped up without state support, some grants, but in reality, it's come primarily from us to be able to ensure that we have a robust program. Baltimore City has been blessed with a lot of different federal grants and others that have enabled them, because of the dire consequences that their community finds themselves in, that have been able to build a robust system for all of their kids. So yes, there are jurisdictions who have and are doing more than we are, but they get more assistance than we do as well. And I say that because our ultimate goal is to make sure that we can get to all of our kids, but not just that. It is about what Ms. Collins was talking about when it comes to really being able to get into what we're seeing from the full day, or not full day, from the full year schools, and to integrating a lot of our special education schools and programs into our generic programs as well. I think that that's the innovation that we'll continue to see here in Montgomery County and throughout the state. And, you know, Councilmember Elrich, to your point, you know, the real question, and I said this at State Ledge this morning, is whether or not the governor is going to put forth the resources as a part of this budget to really fund early childhood education. Because the state legislature, and Councilmember Hucker can tell you, is limited in terms of what they can do should the governor decide this is not a priority. And so realistically, we can put forth all the recommendations we want, and the General Assembly can support them and say this is great. But if the governor isn't serious about doing it, and quite honestly, raising taxes to do it, because that's where the money's going to come from, then all of this is for naught. And it's a lot of work that's been done and put into really creating, working with stakeholders to come up with a strategy of how we can take our system to the next level. But if those resources aren't there, individual local resources, I can tell you right now, are not going to be able to afford to do it. It's impossible. There's no way that we as an individual locality or any of the individual localities can do it on their own without state assistance for what it is that we're trying to do in taking our early childhood to the next care to the next level. I did just want to touch on one thing, Councilmember Navarro, that you said, and asking a question about the kindergarten readiness. Now, this is where the school system and I diverge, and that's fine. You know, we don't have to agree on everything, but just to let you know, the kindergarten readiness assessment is done as a census, and so it's not. It's really not, I think, a snapshot of what's happening in our schools, because we don't go to every single student. It's just a random sampling. And so what we've done as a part of our recommendations is actually pushed for us to actually give the kindergarten readiness assessment to every single child. It will help us when it comes to being able to see for a lot of our children who may come from lower socioeconomic means, who may be of different cultural and ethnicities, to be able to start to see if there are some things we might need to change and address. And so I've been very focused on that as a part of our recommendations, but we'll see how that goes in the mix of the General Assembly, but it is a part of our recommendations, and I think will give us a better snapshot when it comes to where our kids are in terms of their kindergarten readiness. So I look forward to that discussion as well.
No, and I mean, I'll just say that this is why it's so concerning to me, because if this, you know, given that this is sampling and we see where we are, and it hasn't really changed that much. I mean, we've always known that we have a real problem when it comes to our English language learner, low-income children, children with disabilities. They present at kindergarten already with an academic achievement gap.
That's right.
That only exacerbates. And so, again, I think it's important to have those numbers and to figure out how we can be more accurate, but it still points to a similar, you know, trend that we've seen for quite many
That's
years.
exactly right, and incredibly concerning. And so one in which we also have seen that the kindergarten readiness assessment has been able to give us the information in some cases that teachers can then utilize to start to identify some students who may have disabilities or learning challenges. And so from that perspective, you know, more to be said about that issue. We'll have more discussion on that, but certainly one in which I think in the future, you know, is going to help us in the long run. I know that we have another part of the presentation coming, so I'm not going to get into any of the details in terms of current recommendations, but just wanted to say to MCPS, kudos to you for doing the great job that you've been doing working in conjunction with our Health and Human Services and with our providers, both public, as well as providing resources for some of our private providers too. And I want to make sure that folks understand that our system involves and they do get support from our government as well. And so it really does create a robust system for what we can do. There's still so much more that we need to do. So just wanted to thank them for their great work and their devotion to continuing to increase opportunities for all of our kids. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mr. Elrich.
So I just want to make a little more of a remark on this. I don't denigrate the work anybody's done. You only can do what you've been given money to do. So pointing out the lack of what I think, increasing the number of people we serve is directly related to what's been funded. And it's not a critique, that's just a statement of reality. But words matter, and so, how would the sentences read if we said young children from low-income households, 75% aren't ready for school, or low-income or income from non-English, folks with English language learners, almost 80% aren't ready for school. The choice of language actually matters. And, when we did the climate change stuff, what did we declare? We said this is a climate emergency. Why? Because we understand what it's going to mean if we don't grapple with this. I would suggest that the situation of children in this county from non-primary English households and in poverty, or low income even, not necessarily in dire poverty, is an emergency. At the rate we're going, this is another generation that will not get the education they need and will not be ready to work. So I know $32 million is a lot of money. I can't look at a budget and say, here's $32 million. I mean, you can only cancel Montrose Parkway so many times. It's not a gift that keeps, I'm just joking. But it's so, can a person use a little bit of humor occasionally? But the point is that, there aren't easy things that you can just tap into every year and say, this is where we're going to get the money. So we've got a really heavy lift, and we need partners. But I do think it's important to talk about what needs to be done and what lies ahead. I know that it's good to celebrate success, but if we're not clear with everybody about the road we've got to go down and the consequences of not going down that road, it may be harder. I think it makes it harder to marshal the resources that we need to do this. I think if people think we're doing perfectly well and we're making progress, then people may not see it as an emergency. And so I would just suggest that we probably ought to start using language regarding the education of our children that approximates the language that we used regarding the climate change issue. This is something we have to do. I don't have an immediate solution for doing it, but it's something we have to do.
Very good. We have another presentation. So, Mr. Katz, if you'll have a brief question, and then we do have another presentation.
Well, mine's not exactly a question, but I did want to mention, and I agree with what Mark just said, and the Vice President as well, about the emergency and about the marketing of this. I think it is important how we say it so that people understand it. This is much more, and not to take in any way away from the opportunity gap or the education gap to help solve that, but this is about economic development and everything else we touch in the county. And this is an investment that if we make it right, not only do we make it easier to have our students in school and remain in school and become successful, but we also make it right so that employers would want to come here because of our students. So I think this is an important topic, and in some things you can't afford not to do.
Good. And before we close out, so again, I really want to commend Superintendent Jack Smith and his fantastic team in early childhood. You've done an amazing job. Well, not just the team in early childhood, but whoever works on early childhood. You've done an amazing job. And I know, again, I want to call out the committee for its strong support here, all the members of the committee. But for the superintendent to put $2.5 million in his budget request to continue to expand early childhood just set in place a very, very positive dynamic, and the council was able to add to that. And I personally would hope that the superintendent would do that again this year in his budget request, and that the council once again would add to that. And I think if we can keep working our way, up this mountain, we will get to the top. Now we have another presentation, I believe, from HHS. Director Alawalia.
Thank you. So I know if we were to follow do you want to follow the layout of the report? Then let's talk first about the cost of quality study really briefly, and then talk about the WPA, because those are the two pieces that we're here to update you on. So the early childhood strategic plan that we worked on had in it a task to complete a cost of quality study. And so that cost of quality study was conducted by Foundations for Families. And I'm going to defer to Ms. Barnes, who is our Chief of Children, Youth, and Families, to speak to some of the key elements that are in the report itself. So boosting the WPA reimbursement is one of those, but I'll defer that to the next conversation so we can talk about what's happening with the state subsidies and the impact as best as we can gauge on county WPA dollars. So.
My name is Joanne Barnes, Chief of Children, Youth, and Family Services. As Uma said, as part of our attempts to move forward with the strategic plan, we did bring a consultant in. That consultant pulled information from a variety of places, including from Maryland Family Network, where they do a survey of providers related to the costs of care. And we were able, in a short amount of time, to survey some of our local providers as well. And we produced a report that was just recently released that shows what it really costs to do quality care in Montgomery County. That report, we had asked for 7 scenarios where the vendor would look at 7 different types of care that range from, in this case, center care for infants, for toddlers, and for children in pre-K. And we looked at a variety of options. In fact, instead of the 7 that we asked for, the provider was able to work out 16 scenarios where we could look at what it really costs a provider to care for children. In addition to that, we were able to customize a federal tool, and that tool will be up on our website in just a few weeks. A provider can go in and use that tool, put information in about their costs, and can determine where their break-even is. Now, if you look at the report, it does show exactly how expensive it is to run a child care business. It takes a lot of things into consideration, like the minimum wage, the cost of space, the professional development for the staff, and it assumes that those providers would be reaching level 3 of the state Excels program. So we initially have had several rounds with providers, with council staff, and a few other groups, and we continue to spread out this tool so people know what it means and how to use it. We have not released the tool on our website yet. We are working with our IT department to make sure 2 things happen. When a provider goes in and uses it, that their information is confidential only to them, and that no one can go in and change the behind-the-scenes algorithms in it, so that the tool remains, keeps its integrity. And as soon as we do that, it'll be online for providers to use. In the meantime, though, we can always work with the provider to help them use the federal tool, although it's not quite as tailored to Montgomery County. So one important thing, well, the last thing I'll say about that tool is it is important for all of us in this work to recognize what it costs to provide care for children. When you look at the report, you see that the cost ranges from almost $24,000 a year to take care of an infant, up to about $11,000 for preschool. And the average for a provider will vary depending on what their space costs, what the mix of children are that they have in their center. All of those factors come into play with the costs. But it is important that as policymakers that we understand what that cost is for providers.
So, thank you. The one thing I would say, in your packets, there's a list of recommendations that have come from the cost of quality report. And in that, especially the cost of becoming Excels, achieving level 3 of Excels is pretty expensive and difficult for most of our providers to achieve. It was a little disheartening to see how difficult it was going to be. And so we do have to spend some time thinking about what that begins to look like and where we're going with some of those qualitative requirements that we think are important for our providers.
And one last thing that I would add is the report that we did provide where MCPS and HHS jointly worked on some recommendations related to pre-K. You will see when you look at the cost of quality care report that the annual amount to care for a child is very similar. So we were pleased to see that it affirms the work that we did earlier in the year.
Okay, so now I want to talk about state child care subsidy adjustments and the Working Parents Assistance Program. So for the past 30 years, WPA has been serving families and children in Montgomery County. And on an average, we serve about 500 children a year who receive the WPA benefit. And we've had over 300 providers each year who are taking advantage of the subsidy that parents bring to them. So this is really where the excitement is, because this one, for sure, the state has made a commitment, and it appears so far that they are delivering on this. The state declared in July of 2018 that there would be an 8% increase in reimbursement rates based on the 2018 average cost of care. Now, Maryland's been one of the lowest nationally in terms of child care subsidy reimbursement. So then they increased the income eligibility scale to 65% of state median income, which means that it went up from $35,000 to $71,000, the eligibility threshold, which is really good. And continuing eligibility for family of 4, they are covered up to $93,000 in subsequent years. So they're starting with $71,000, but they intend to grow up to $93,000. So as you can imagine, this has opened the door for many Montgomery County families. If we go to the next. So we are starting with some scenarios to help better explain what happens with state subsidies. So if we look at this scenario where you have a single parent of 3, the income being $48,076, that's the income threshold right now. First child is 9 months old, second child, Emmy, is 3 years old, and third child, Lizzie, is 5 years old. Before any changes, this family would have been over income for state subsidy and would receive about almost $20,000 through WPA, right?
Said over income?
Yeah,
So they
go
would not
for
be
it.
eligible for
They
state?
would not be
But they would
eligible.
be eligible for county.
For county, right? So before the change, and the county would have then provided them almost $20,000 in WPA. But this family would now be covered under the state subsidy program.
So what we've provided over the next 3 slides is a summary of what it costs for each individual child. The first child that's 9 months old would be in infant care, And a couple of things that I would point out to you, I know we're running low on time, but with the WPA increases, in this particular case, the WPA subsidy would be $11,592. Now that's after we've increased our WPA tables this year to account for the current cost of care and also updating the table for bringing it to the current federal poverty level. Our tables were in fact 3 to 4 years old, so we've updated both of those. But in this instance, you will see that the state subsidy for this same child is $12,168. So in fact, the state is providing a higher subsidy than the WPA program would. If you look at the second case where we have a 3-year-old child who qualifies as a toddler and not as an infant, it's the reverse. The WPA subsidy with the increases is $8,600, and the state subsidy is $8,200. So as we go from child to child, we're seeing differences depending on the age of the child and the cost of care, but they are still fairly close. And then lastly, the older child who's pre-K or kindergarten age, the WPA subsidy is $4,900 and the state subsidy is $6,100. So in this case, it's a considerable more coming from the state program. So these are the challenges that we're working with now as we look at what the impact will be on the WPA program in future months and future years. Lastly, just when you talk about the overall impact to the family, I would just point out that for a family that's earning $48,000, there's still a considerable amount of out-of-pocket costs, even though we have increased our tables. So we don't want to claim victory yet, but I think we need to continue to massage the numbers, analyze the data before we can come back with what the right next steps are for the WPA program.
So I will say that this narrative can be a good one for us. We do have, once we complete our analysis, we will be able to see sort of what are opportunities and what are some of the options that we can bring before the next executive and to the next council. The narrative, though, a little bit is being hijacked in the community with sort of this fear that resources are going to somehow be diminished or would look different. And it really would be, I think, unfair for us at this moment to come forward. It isn't that we're not having lots of discussions about what are good options, which way should we lean, what do the numbers say, where do we do the analysis. But it feels premature to come before you because, A, we have not fully completed our analysis of WPA impacts. We're still going through, in some ways, we have to go cohort by cohort and make those kinds of determinations as to where is there more money in the state system, where is there less, what is the gap, what are we trying to close, what makes the most sense, do we do more at 185%, do more to get everybody to self-sufficiency, all these options that we can look at. So we think a more fuller conversation in the new year will make more sense than for us to come forward to you today and bring you a rash of options. But I did want to assure you that many of those conversations are deeply underway right now because you cannot overnight produce options that are vetted and thought through and well structured. So I will stop there and be happy to answer any questions. We're both available.
All right, we've got a couple questions or comments. Mr. Elrich.
Joanne, when you started, you said something about minimum wage, and my question is, with the state requirements for actually having qualified staff, they're going to have higher educational requirements. Is minimum wage even relevant? I mean, you're not going to hire, I don't think anybody can expect to hire somebody with a certificate or even a college degree at minimum wage to teach these kids. And I hope our cost analysis isn't based on minimum wage, but something more likely, like what it's actually going to cost to hire a teacher.
I would like to say that I'm the expert
Okay.
on all of the data that's in our cost of quality report. I would have to probably defer to some of my team for specifics on that. I do know, though, that the report looks at not just teachers, but teaching assistants. And so there are various roles. And yes, I think you had asked me in another situation when we were rolling out this concept whether the teacher would be required to have a master's degree or a bachelor's degree.
Bachelor's.
And so it does seem to be focused on a bachelor degree, not a master's. But I can get the exact answer to that for you.
Okay, and when we're talking about impact on family, I just, if 15,000 is a third of somebody's income, they've got about 30,000 left, and if they're spending, $1,500 to $1,800 a month on an apartment, they don't have much left after that. When you knock out taxes, they have to pay and everything else, there's still not enough to live on. I mean, you can make the numbers work technically. There's more money than they're going in than going out, but there's not much left over at the end of the day to meet basic needs. I just think it's important to remember that you can make the numbers work, but what it's going to look like for people, even at these levels, as good as they are, and as big an improvement as they are, it's still going to be a rough load for people. I do think, when minimum wage fully kicks in, and if you're a two-parent household, then you're looking at incomes of around 60,000 a year at the start, if you're only earning minimum wage. And I think that those things begin to have significant impact on the ability to afford, at least more easily afford some of this stuff and have some money left over. But this is a very, very challenging scenario. But I appreciate the work here. And am I right to assume that, I was looking at like level 5 on Circle 24, is the cost per age group about in 3 and 4 year olds seems to be roughly 14,000 a year? And is that the cost of operating a center, or is that the cost of they actually would go to the parent? Because you have to assume there's overhead and profit in that. So what's the number represent?
First, I would like to point out that this study was already underway when the state made the announcement that they were making major enhancements to the subsidy program. So this does not reflect the current state of state subsidies. We have been talking to the vendor through our contracting team about bringing the vendor back to update it, because we think that will significantly impact what you see here. So we do have that as a task to do.
And are people looking at any of the requirements for centers? I mean, I've had people who operate centers say that some of what they have to do seems unnecessary and unnecessarily onerous. And are people looking at any of this and saying, does it really make sense to make people do this or that? I mean, I'd have to bring somebody in here to talk about it, but when I talk to people, it seemed that some of what's required maybe doesn't make sense. Things didn't seem like they made
I just
anybody's.
interject that this was a point of conversation in Montgomery moving forward and some of the roundtables in terms of some additional things that have been proposed. Taking into consideration that Maryland has one of the stringentest licensing requirements already. And so really kind of looking at that cost-benefit ratio, because it is true that there seems to be that disconnect with the state and maybe some advocates really wanting to, put more and more and more requirements. And then you look at the cost that it takes to run a center, whether it's a center or family childcare, and we're continuing to create a larger gap. So that, has come up, and I think it would be interesting for us to look into that and talk to our state ledge folks to have some of this, included in those debates, because it really is a state-imposed set of requirements. And, when are we where is that sweet spot in terms of, ensuring safety and quality versus creating a larger schism for affordability? It's an interesting question.
And I'd extend that to any discussion of county codes that might impact on the opening of centers. I mean, I generally think we may have gone overboard on a few things.
Most of this, though, is regulated by the state.
Yeah.
We do hear a lot of what you have said from our local providers. One thing I will say as a benefit from us working closely with Montgomery moving forward is that in the next couple of weeks, we do have a meeting scheduled with some of the new officials at the state MSDE. And so we're hoping that that will be an eye-opening conversation. And so that's coming up in early November.
I hope it's eye-opening and a listening experience that results in actually doing something.
Well, we certainly will do our best to put the issues forward.
Thank you.
Sydney?
Thank you very much. First off, for the 14,000, that's $270 a week. I think that's probably what people pay for, the 5-year-old today or whatever. So I think that's probably a number that is correct. And to Mark's point, income that we talk about is gross income. It's not take-home income. And it makes a huge difference. I mean, and the scenario that you had, it was a single parent, I believe, on that slide. Well, does that number count if someone has a court order child support? Does that number count? Does that number include that?
If there is court-ordered child support, it is only included as part of the income if, in fact, it is being received. Many
Well, I
times
understand that's a
people
huge
have-
problem. I do,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so that is taken into consideration. If there's a court order and the absent parent is not paying, then that would not be included in the income amount.
Thank you, and I appreciate this report. This is very good, and it's certainly eye-opening. Thanks.
Mr. Rice, did you still? No? Okay. Ms. Navarro.
Just to add to this conversation about these, additional requirements, I know that we just had our state legislative session on priorities for Montgomery County, and I'd like to, propose to my colleagues that we include some language that focuses on this ongoing challenge. I mean, if we have already, I think we're on record saying that this early care and education initiative is a major priority for us. There are definitely some state I think, barriers to help us move this through. So, if we could work together to ensure that that is reflected somehow in that priorities letter, I think that would be really important.
That is a great suggestion. Thank you, Council Vice President Navarro. If we could ask our team to review what the state of affairs is and what we can be pushing for in Annapolis and
We'll
get
take
that
that on.
language, that's
Thank you.
great. Mr. Rice?
Just so that folks know, some of those recommendations are things that are being discussed in the current commission as a whole anyway, in terms of those recommendations, but still think it needs to be in that, it absolutely needs to be identified. But just wanted folks to know that that is a part of that discussion as well.
That's a good point. And again, we've made big progress in the state recently. I mean, Senator King moving that child care subsidies bill through, getting that funded is it's going to be a game changer. I just wanted to say for my part, I think that if funds are freed up through WPA, I would think we should target those for reinvestment back towards fours, low-income 4-year-olds. I think we ought to concentrate our efforts, whether it's through programs through MCPS or through targeted subsidies through community partnership programs. Either way, I think we ought to focus on fours, low-income fours, and then to the extent that, we maybe can't absorb that, threes as well. But rather than dispersing it through the entire age range, I think we ought to target our efforts on fours.
So thank you for that. We will definitely take that into consideration. Our hope is to put together a menu of options. We hear a lot too about children who are in informal care settings who are really struggling.
Yeah.
Then to get in, to come in, even to pre-K in some way ready to learn. And so there is this issue of parents who are struggling, right, at earlier age groups too, and that there is the 0 to 3, the 3 to 5. So we want to have...
There's no child for whom we aren't 100%
right. And then this idea of family support centers has been, thrown around. So we just think there are options there that should be put together for the new executive to consider and for the new council then to be brought up to speed for discussions, right? It's not to land on something, but to have a set of options for conversation. So, but the 4-year-old, and even as Mr. Eldridge was talking about this, the idea of do you continue to close the gap to the point where with the same set of families, right, for whom the burden seems higher or lower, or do you expand it so newer families who have nothing are able to come in the door? I mean, these are all relevant questions that we will have to wrestle with because the cost is so prohibitive, right? So do you do a lot for a few to make sure that those kids have any kids that we're serving have the best option, or do you spread it in a way that every kid has some options? These are all the toughest policy questions that you all sitting over there have the burden to help us with. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Navarro.
Well, I know in the packet on page 8 on the bottom, Vivian, you state that the council president has expressed interest in hearing options for expanding early care and education services. I think it's important to clarify that, the main reason why we adopted a bill that created the position for Ms. Ortiz has is precisely to be able to have somebody who's an expert working with all the partners to present a menu of items so that as resources are made available, we have kind of a blueprint. So this is the reason why. So it is not just because, one particular council member wants to go in a particular direction. We need to be comprehensive, I think, and we need to align with the resources, with the need, and where we're going to have the most impact. We're not the experts here. You guys are the experts. So I know that I personally would like to wait and come back to hear what is that menu, and how can we be most strategic. And as the Kerwin Commission finishes their work, and as we identify state funding, as we identify what we can do here, we need to be super strategic about it. So I just really want to clarify that for the record, because I think it's very important. I think this council has been already very much committed to making sure that we are methodical in how we approach this work. And because if not, imagine I have a long list of things that I would love to see done. So I'm being disciplined and really appreciate how much work has been already committed to this whole entire process. It's really awesome to see MCPS at the table, HHS, community partners working together. That's how we're going to, work on this. So I look forward to the 2019 first session on this so that we can deliberate. Thank you.
Well, thank you for preparing the options that I requested for you to prepare. I appreciate that very much. Councilmember Navarro, you requested this session back in the summer. I appreciate that. I think we are making some strides. We've got a lot before us, and I look forward to taking this up in the new year. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes that item, and I believe that concludes our business before lunch. And we are coming back at 1:45. So we can eat. Hopefully not cause too much mischief. We have 10 speakers this afternoon, and then we have a closed session. All right, 1:45. Good afternoon, everyone. And we will now proceed with a few public hearings that we have on our afternoon agenda. And the first, this is a public hearing on an amendment to the FY19 to 2024 Capital Improvements Program, and also a special appropriation to the FY19 capital budget for the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, Department of Parks, in the amount of $1 million for small grant donor-assisted capital improvements. The council is tentatively scheduled to have a work session on this item and take action on Tuesday, November 13th. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business November 8th. For everyone scheduled to testify today, please bring copies of your testimony to the clerk now, if you haven't already, for this hearing or any of our subsequent hearings. And our speakers, there are no speakers on this hearing, but, all right. And now we will proceed to the next item. There is no speaker on the next item, which is a public hearing on an amendment to the FY 19 to 24 Capital Improvements Program and an appropriation to the capital budget for the Park and Planning Commission in the amount of $116,562 for the acquisition of local parks. Again, the deadline for materials, council session is going to be on Tuesday, November 13th, and the deadline for materials is November 8th. And again, there were no speakers. Now, agenda item number 11, which is an amendment to the FY 19 to 24 Capital Improvements Program and an appropriation to the FY 19 capital budget for the Park and Planning Commission in the amount of $99,500 for ADA compliance in non-local parks. The council is tentatively scheduled to have a work session on this item and take action on Tuesday, November 13th. November 8th is the deadline for materials. We have two speakers. We have Joseph Mornini and Matthew Markoff. And there we are. So please come on down. You are the winner. Casey Anderson, am I correct that you were not going to testify in those earlier items? And right, okay.
He thinks that's his seat.
I guess he is mighty comfortable.
When you come, that's where you sit.
We welcome that. Okay, so Joseph Marnini, you're first, and you'll have 3 minutes. You'll turn on the microphone at the base of this mic stand. There's a button, and when you have 30 seconds left, the yellow light will come on. So at that point, you'll know it'll start to ding.
Okay.
At that point, you definitely want to start wrapping up because it comes quicker than you'd think it will. Take it away.
Well, sure. Thank you for letting me come here to speak on this behalf of this particular expenditure that the county is going to be doing. I'm not going to go into the title of it because I can't really remember it. But I'd like to keep my remarks to just in 3 general areas. Support of veterans in Montgomery County, support of disabled citizens in Montgomery County that could use our paddling programs and this particular ADA put-in that we call it, and some forward thinking for those who in the future in Montgomery County will face life-altering decisions that maybe something like what we want to do would be helpful for. Montgomery County is home to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, and it's the epicenter for supporting the needs of the military that come from all over the country. We have a program there, a paddling program there, Team River Runner, and we've been there for 14 years, since 2004, and we do kayaking with them. We have a particular program that we do out at Riley's Lock where this particular expenditure would be taking place, and so that's why I'm talking here. We're a pretty well-established program in Montgomery County. We also are a national program. We have 65 chapters throughout the nation in 31 states. We do programs everywhere. We work very closely with the Veterans Administration, and we're going to work very closely with the CBOC that you guys just put together up here in the Gaithersburg area. We also have a lot of generous support and collaboration with other organizations that help us out at Riley's Lock. We have the Elks. We have some Elks here. Hi, Elks. And we actually have a wounded warrior here, Jason Smith, one of our paddlers. He came here just to kind of watch and see what's happening. And we offer weekly Sunday paddling programs that, with the support of the Elks and with Kaleva and their facility out there at Riley's Lock, we're able to have a great paddling program for families throughout Montgomery County. It's not motorized. It's all paddle sports. You guys are all welcome to come out and paddle with us. You're also welcome to come out to Walter Reed and take a look and see what we're doing in the pool there Tuesdays and Thursday nights. Paddlers that are disabled justifiably need a different kind of place to put in other than the motorized vehicles that go in. It takes longer for us to put a boat in the water. We get in their way. And we just need to have the opportunity to be able to put safely a boat in the water and take a boat out of the water. And all citizens should actually have that right. A put-in like this would work for children. It would work for anybody that wants to come down there and use Riley's Lock as a place to paddle out to the Potomac River. An ADA-compliant access at Riley's Lock would serve the need of the paddling community throughout the whole nation, throughout the whole county, rather. And we hope that you would think kindly to that. I'd like to note that there are moments in life when people have a life-changing, opportunity to face a life-changing moment. when that happens, so it's nice to have those organizations that will step up and generously support their needs so that they can continue to have adventure and connections and purposeful activities within, this beautiful county and the river that we have. Thanks very much.
Thank you for speaking from the heart. Matthew Markoff.
My name is Matthew Markoff, and I'm here representing Kaleva, which is down at Riley's Lock and works pretty heavily with Joe Mornini and Team River Runner. And this is getting this passed through is a big help for that area. It's a very popular location. We work with a lot of kids, and we work a lot with Joe Mornini and Team River Runner, and the access down there has been very, very difficult, especially for non-motorized boat users. And it's just been so impressive to see how we've gotten this pushed through, all the work that a lot of people have put into this to make it happen, and the direct impact it's going to have onto the community. It's truly impressive, and we just hoping that we can keep it moving forward. We're appreciative of the funding, and the location is ideal. It's very hard to access the Potomac River and any other locations for handicap needs, and this is going to be the great solution, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, appreciate what you're doing at Kaleva. I can speak as a parent of kids who are using your summer camp. It's a real highlight of the summer. So to know that this will help enable more inclusive programs is really exciting. Thank you for what you're doing. Mr. Rice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Council President. And so I just wanted to say thank you for working so closely with Betsy Luking. I remember back when I got the email from her back in June of 2017 and just started talking about this project. And I unfortunately couldn't come out that day when unfortunately we had bad weather and I couldn't get out to come there with you. But this is what we continue to talk about and making sure that our amenities that we have here are available for everyone. And so truly, as we see a larger number of our veterans coming back, unfortunately, many of whom are disabled and have different kinds of physical challenges that limit them, that we provide them the opportunities to still reap those same kinds of opportunities that everybody else in the community can. It really is about inclusion and equality, and for people with disabilities as well. And so I just really want to thank you guys for being great advocates, for thinking outside of the box and remembering that all of our folks here in Montgomery County want to be able to enjoy all the great things that we have to offer. So thanks for your tireless work. Unfortunately, it took a long time, but it got done. So
Thanks.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Very good. Thank you for your participation today.
All right,
Appreciate
thank you.
that. Now we will move to the next item, which is a public hearing on an amendment to the FY19 to 24 Capital Improvements Program and a special appropriation to the FY19 capital budget for MNC PPC, Department of Parks, in the amount of $180,000 for minor new construction in non-local parks. Council is tentatively scheduled to have a work session and take action on November 13th, and November 8th is the deadline for submission of additional material. And we have Casey Anderson, the chair of our planning board, and we also have Renee Katz and Quentin Remain, and I see, Casey, you'll also speak to item number 13, or you'll come back at item number 13?
Whatever you like. I can do them both at once if that's easy.
I think you can just come back. Well, let's do one at a time. All right, great. Casey, you're first.
Thanks for having us. I wanted to make sure everybody understood what we were asking for here, because we really don't like to come back and ask for more money. Since I'm in the chair, I think we've only really done this a couple times. So I think it's important that we explain what is going on with these projects. In this case, there were some life safety issues with fire access to the site. It's very constrained. It's in a special protection area. We have all kinds of issues with every square inch of pavement that is added becomes a problem in terms of environmental constraints. When we started the project, we didn't realize that fire rescue would require us to widen the driveway to 20 feet. It's basically almost like a barely more than a one-lane road right now in and out of this neighborhood that's kind of tucked back in the Upper Paint Branch. So we had not anticipated that we would have that road construction cost. We also have to construct a water tank that can hold water, because you can't get fire hydrant access if the nature center that we're going to put in this trailer wherever to catch fire. So the Parks Department has made every effort to absorb as much of this cost as possible. It's north of $300,000 in additional cost, but we've identified about half of that internally in PLAR and other accounts. So we came to you asking for the bare minimum of what we really need to finish the project, which is about $180,000. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that we take it very seriously when we come back and ask for more money for a project, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about that.
Mr. Elrich. Yeah, sorry, got ahead of myself. Renee Katz.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Renee Katz, and I'm the president of Friends of Maydale, a volunteer organization committed to the stewardship of Maydale Conservation Park and supporting the Nature Center programming being offered by the Parks Department. The Friends of Maydale strongly urge you to support this supplemental funding request for fire safety improvements at Maydale. These unforeseen costs will fund, as Mr. Anderson said, a wider driveway for fire engines, underground water storage tanks, and associated forest conservation measures. Since the council approved funding for this project in 2016, our group has been meeting quarterly, corresponding with the seasonal offerings that are published in the Parks Guide. We were joined at our meetings by Glenn Rice, the naturalist who's been assigned to Maydale and who's been designing and carrying out outdoor programming for children and their families to learn about and enjoy nature as we await the valuable amenity of a reopened building. I'd like to share some details from my recent visit to Maydale Conservation Park about 2 weeks ago on October 17th to demonstrate all that's happening and getting ready to happen. When I arrived at the park, there was a staff member from MNCPPC there, as well as staff from Kids After Hours who happened to be there checking out the site for possible future field trips by KAH. As I was leaving, Glenn, our naturalist, pulled up. He was meeting with a horticulture teacher from Northwood High School since they were starting their Tree ID program that following Monday with Northwood High School's horticulture students. The class has since met at Maydale, and on the first day of the Tree ID program, they inventoried and cataloged 30 trees. They also calculated the environmental benefits of each of the trees and placed tags on the trees to communicate the benefits to the public. They will be going back out November 16th to plant some additional trees in the area. So in the middle of the day on a Wednesday, I ran into MCPS, Parks, and a private childcare provider, all involved in or planning for the use of the park for nature education and enjoyment. The reopening of Maydale Nature Center means a lot to our area of East County. I continue to be amazed at the creativity, skill, and professionalism of the staff at Montgomery Parks, and I know that their plan for a conservation education center at this unique park will serve the community and the greater good in many ways, including inspiring the next generation of naturalists, horticulturalists, conservationists, arborists, and green architects. Thank you to Councilmember Hucker and Councilmember Elrich for championing this project, and to each of you for the role that you've played in supporting this project. It is our hope that you will all enthusiastically approve this special appropriation related to new fire safety requirements, with the knowledge that you've had an important role in making nature education more accessible to county residents and leading the way for all of us to prioritize our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Quentin.
Thank you very much. My name is Quentin Remine. I'm at 201 Bryant's Nursery Road. I'm president of the Cloverleaf Civic Association. We've been heavily involved, along with the rest of the Cloverleaf citizens, in operating Maydale. In 1994, the center was closed by the parks, but the community wanted to reopen it, so we leased the park from the parks and operated it for the schools for about 12 years, when it was closed again when there were repairs that needed to be made. We've been waiting for over 10 years now for the reopening of the park, which was promised as soon as money became available, and finally last year things opened up for us, and the park was, we had a hearing here for $250,000, and we also got a state grant. And we thought we were all ready to go, and we're looking forward to opening the park in the spring, but unfortunately things did not work out. Things have lingered, and unfortunately though, for Maydale, the program moved on, but we got a naturalist, Glenn Rice, who's been terrific. Friends of Maydale has been terrific in getting organized under Renee Katz to work out program details, and the schools are checking things out and ready to send students over to the program. But unfortunately, we have the cart before the horse, and we don't have a building yet. So this modest amount of money, the whole project is very inexpensive, is all that's needed to get this program going again, and hopefully we'll be able to open in the spring. And we thank you. We've met with you before, and we thank you for your support, and appreciate meeting with you very much last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Remine. Mr. Elrich.
So you and I had talked about this a while ago. So you weren't able to get them to relent from widening the driveway up there?
Believe me, we were back and forth on it, and there's no way to get them off of that position. Had to be, I believe it was 20 feet was the minimum, and they said they need the water tank. So that's what apparently the code requires, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I think this is unfortunate because we're not putting any houses in jeopardy or anything else. And to be able to drive back there on a driveway, which was more than enough to get the truck back there, and to have this expense. And I feel a little bit the same about the water tank, because as somebody pointed, this is one room, and it's probably going to be gone before a fire truck ever gets there. So to add this kind of expense for something which adds no value just does not make sense. And I'm sorry we have to spend the money on this, really. We could, you all could have used the money for better things.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your being here. We'll move to the next item, which is an amendment to the FY19 to 24 Capital Improvements Program and special appropriation to the FY19 capital budget for MNC PPC Parks Department in the amount of $680,000 for the Josiah Henson Historic Park. The council is tentatively scheduled to have a work session on this item and take action on the Tuesday, November 13th. We have James Henson and John Robinson. Mr. Henson and Mr. Robinson, you'll come forward. And Mr. Henson, we appreciate your participation in proceedings relating to a number of park and county resources that are related to your family's legacy. And thank you for being an advocate.
Thank you very much.
And you will be oh yes, we'll actually begin with Mr. Anderson, who will continue his testimony and present the issue for us, and then we'll turn to our speakers.
Thank you. A combination of factors have led us to conclude that we really need to ask for some additional funding so this project can go forward. The construction bids came in higher than expected, but I think it's also fair to say that we have not raised, the Parks Foundation had not raised quite as much money as we'd hoped, and I would not fault them at all. Mr. Robinson is here and he can speak to this if he wants to, but you may recall that the Parks Foundation really had to be reconstituted after it had reached a point where it was really not functioning in the way that it was intended. John Robinson, among a number of other people, have really stepped forward to rebuild that structure in a way that has really been helpful to the Parks Department. They are generating significant contributions to get projects done. Just the other day, we had the project with Joan O'Rourke and the money for the Brookside Garden greenhouse. There's other smaller projects that have been made possible, like the portable pump track that you see being carted around the county. That was a contribution from the Parks Foundation. So I wouldn't want anybody to think that the Parks Foundation was not on I think we're on the right track. It's getting better, it's getting stronger, but we really are at the point where we can't wait any longer to get these exhibits in place And I am confident I don't need to explain the value of this project. I think these gentlemen will probably speak to it in any case, but that's what's going on. We really need to move forward, and the Parks Foundation has put significant effort into raising the money. We've also identified other sources of revenue, like a state bond bill and program open space funding. But again, we are coming to you with the bare minimum of what we think we need in addition to those supplemental sources to get this project open and available to the public. And I think when that happens, you're all going to be excited and glad that we did this, because it's going to be great.
Very good. Thank you, Casey. Now, Mr. Henson, you are first in line.
Oh, thank you very much. It is really a privilege to be here addressing the Montgomery County Council on this occasion. I'll be very brief. I would just like for you to favorably approve the adoption of the capital budget supplements as requested. And that's assuming that the figures and everything meet with your approval. I guess the main reasons why I would ask for you to approve this budget is because, one, it's a very important project, especially given the times that we are facing nationwide. But I also say that knowing that Montgomery County has been a leader in advocating for the causes of individual rights and community uplifting. I used to be an attorney for Howard County, and then I represented the county in a lot of human rights cases, and I worked very closely with the Montgomery County Office of Human Rights for a good reason. Montgomery County was the leading enforcer of human rights throughout the state in the 80s when I began, and our laws were basically contingent or depending on and relying on what Montgomery County said. So I know about your reputation for goodwill for all, and again, it's so badly needed that I'm sure that you all will continue to do the right thing, and that's about it. I'm privileged to be here, and I pray that you'll make the right decision.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henson. And Mr. Robinson.
Well, thank you for your time, President Reamer. I have to press a button here someplace.
One more.
This one?
No, you got the right button. Press it again.
Okay. Things have changed since I was before you last time, about 10 or 12 years ago, so I have to adjust the system. But thank you for the hearing today, and it's a privilege to be here with Mr. Henson. We discovered we have a lot in common. I tried civil rights case when I was in private practice so long ago that Justice Ginsburg was District Court Judge Ginsburg at the time. But I would just read 2 sentences from my statement. The museum is one of the department's largest projects and one of its most important, particularly given several recent and particularly troubling events. The museum centers on the life of one remarkable individual and how he obtained his freedom and used that freedom to the benefit of others. But the museum also speaks to the universal importance of courage, conscience, and commitment in the basic human desire for dignity, freedom, and personal growth. So you see, Mr. Henson was essentially, had exactly the same perception of the project and its importance. Now, the balance of my statement lays out numbers, that's for the record, but I think it's important to tell you that this year, calendar year, which is our fiscal year, we've made a $500,000 commitment. We've already written a check for $100,000 out of the foundation's discretionary resources, funds that we raised from other sources that were not committed. There's another $100,000 that we're processing through a grant from the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, which we have to match at $50,000, a total of $100,000. And there's $300,000 in bond bill proceeds. Now, those proceeds do not come through the foundation's books because they have to flow directly to the department, but Nina Applebaum has been the lead spear chucker in Annapolis with raising those funds, and she's been phenomenally successful. Now, since I've become the acting executive director, beginning in the first week of October, I've gone over the books. I'm reasonably confident right now I can see us raising at least another $100,000 for our next fiscal year, meaning the calendar year 2019. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Henson, your family is the Henson family of Josiah Henson's
Yes.
progeny?
Josiah Henson is my great, great, great uncle. And my mother and my aunt are nieces of Matthew Henson. And Matthew Henson and my grandfather, Bailey Henson, are brothers.
Ah.
And they're half-brothers. They have the same father, different mothers.
How about that?
And Matthew's father and my grandfather's father was Lemuel Henson, who was a nephew of Josiah Henson.
Okay.
And so that's a quick connection.
You know your history.
It took a
family
while
history.
for me to get to that point.
I bet.
But we're there now. And I'm just so privileged to be here, especially in Montgomery County. Like I said, I was a new attorney in the 80s, and we just relied, and I don't know if I said it before, when you get to be 82, sometimes you get a little doty, you know. But Ike Leggett, the county executive, came over and gave us some training, the attorneys, on how to really be effective in litigating human rights cases. And so we benefited from that training, and I was an attorney, and later I became the administrator of the office, and then I became the deputy director of the Merlin Commission on Human Rights. So I owe Montgomery County quite a bit from a legal perspective, and also from a role model perspective. And I've been here, I've testified on the Matthew Henson State Park, and I spoke at that ceremony opening of that park, and I've been here when the county bought the old Raleigh house, and the family who had the house and sold it to the county, they were very nice. They let me come and go through the cabin and all before, you know, the purchase and before the public really got real involved. So I've been to, and I participated in the archaeological dig on the property. So I've had some experience with Montgomery County in a number of areas, and I'm proud of all of those relationships, and I'm sure that you will continue on being the leaders that you are. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We have a few council members who might wish to have some dialogue. Mr. Elrich.
Thank you for coming out today. I mean, I feel really privileged to have you here and to listen to you talk about your connection. You're not exactly disinterested or remotely connected to this. This is up close, and I'm really glad we're doing what we're doing, that Parks has made this a priority, and I definitely want to see this done and done right. And in this day and age, probably more than ever. Thank you.
My uncle, my uncle Tom Massey, he has an 8th grade education, but he likes to use big words. So in response to what you said, I'm going to use one of his words. The feeling is reciprocal.
Excellent. Mr. Leventhal.
Mr. Henson, this has been a long day, and you've really improved the quality of our lives here today. So the council president asked you the question I was going to ask, so I won't belabor the point, although I would share with my colleagues, we've been doing each year during Black History Month a special program on African American history, and I won't be here, but maybe I can watch it on cable or come by, but I think there's a potential speaker who, you know, might be an excellent speaker to honor. And I just, again, my question was already asked, but I just wanted to let you know, Mr. Henson, I'm very good at counting votes at this dais. I really am. It's a skill that I have. And I predict that this special appropriation is going to sail through unanimously with no trouble.
Thank you very much for that prediction, and I hope you're correct.
Thank you. I'll just close and say that the Henson family is one of the special families in this county's history, and I recently had the chance to attend the unveiling of a new documentary called The Road to Dawn. It's about the book of the same name, The Road to Dawn, by an author named Jared Brock, who researched the incredible contribution of your great uncle, Josiah Henson, to history. And he is the person who inspired the story of the character Uncle Tom, who Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, and it was the most widely read book of the entire century. It's really hard probably for us to even understand just what an impact that book had on dialogue, but it was a profound, it was just an absolute explosion of consciousness that book created. And Josiah Henson, by escaping to freedom and being the kind of person who had the capacity to tell his story and found a whole community in Canada and write a biography and campaign for abolition, it was those strengths that inspired Harriet Beecher Stowe's character, which then rocked the world and moved us to the bloody conclusion of slavery and that horrible episode. And of course, we're still grappling with its consequences. But Josiah Henson lived right there, right off Old Georgetown Road. It's the same Old Georgetown Road today that it was. Yes. Some of the potholes are probably still the same potholes, but it's the same route, and when you step on that land, it's the same land that he walked. So I've been suggesting that we should name the high school that we will open near there for Josiah Henson. I think that would be a fitting tribute to him, and it's just an incredible part of our history. So thank you for bringing it alive today, Mr. Henson.
If I may. I would like to make one statement that I haven't made previously, but it is true, and it really might be at the crux of why Josiah Henson was so empowered. He had his first experience with the Lord in Montgomery County. He went to a church that a white tradesman had told him to come to. He couldn't come in, but he was outside the window, and he heard the minister talking about Jesus and how Jesus, gave his life for free and bondsman. So he understood that he was a bondsman. So he said, that man Jesus, he's for me too. And he took it to heart. And as a teenager, he became very dedicated to a religious conviction about Jesus and humankind, and that continued throughout his life. And as you indicated, he became a reverend. But it was right in that church. As a matter of fact, the name of the church is now the Josiah Henson House. Somebody might know where it is. It's off Beach Road. There's a park there, and they play a lot of sports. But that's named the Josiah Henson House. And that's where he met the Lord, and that was the watchword that guided him through his life.
Well, I would encourage everyone to read his autobiography. Josiah Henson's autobiography is a fantastic read. It's short and to the point, but it's powerful. And there's a lot of characters in that story. The individual who maimed him, who beat him savagely with a timber, was named Samuel Litton.
Is he now?
I think it's related. I haven't seen this document, but it makes sense. It would be Littonsville.
You're correct, but see, the one distinction that has to be made.
A little closer to the mic, please, Mr. Henson.
Oh, I'm sorry. One distinction that has to be made is, Josiah Henson published his autobiography. He dictated it in 1849, and it impressed Harriet Beecher Stowe. Now, his book was nonfiction. He impressed upon, Harriet Beecher Stowe read his story and said, my goodness, this is a model. This man is a model for my fictional character, Tom, who was beat by the overseer, and he was killed by the overseer. Luckily, Josiah didn't go through that kind of brutality. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes it's easy to confuse Reverend Josiah Henson with the fictional Uncle Tom. And I just want to make everyone aware that Harriet Beecher Stowe, I mean, as someone said earlier, I mean, that her book was the bestseller in the country. I mean, maybe in the world.
It was in the world, other than the Bible. It was
yes.
in the world, yeah.
But the point is, she did kind of, use the facts that would help her book be more effective. And those facts were fictional, but Josiah Henson lived to be 94. And so
the fictional character Uncle Tom, unfortunately, is most of what people know. And they need to know the story of Josiah Henson because he was a man who lived here and he fought for freedom and abolition and he contributed to history. And that's why we're doing this.
Correct.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your participation today. And that concludes this item. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, John Robinson. Next item, number 14, is a public hearing on an amendment to the FY19 to 24 Capital Improvements Program and a special appropriation to the county government's capital budget, Department of Recreation, in the amount of $700,000 for Manna Food Center and Sunflower Bakery. An HHS committee work session is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, November 1st. Persons wishing to submit additional material for the council's consideration should do so before the close of business today. And we have several speakers: Jackie DiCarlo, Daphne Raskus, Meredith Weisel. And we'll proceed in that order. Jackie, Daphne, Meredith.
Good afternoon. Oh, good afternoon. Thanks. I'm Jackie DiCarlo. I am proud to represent Manna Food Center and to explain the importance of the $400,000 appropriation to support creating a center for ending hunger in East County. I'm going to use my 3 minutes, though, to remark a little bit on the importance of the county council. I've been at Manna for 5 years, and I quickly learned how essential smart, passionate public policy and investment is to the quality of life in Montgomery County and our aims at creating a hunger-free community. And so I just want to thank Councilmember George Leventhal for his able leadership of the HHS committee and serving as co-chair of Healthy Montgomery. I want to recognize Mr. Berliner for the vision and commitment he had to a food security plan that we are ambitiously and ceaselessly working toward. Certainly, Mr. Elrich and Ms. Florine have been reliable and responsive partners, so thank you for your service. I look forward to continuing on with those of you who are returning and soon to be elected officials to achieve a hunger-free Montgomery County. I believe you all know 63,000 of our neighbors are not always sure where their next meal is coming from. Currently, Manna is reaching about half of those. These are seniors, children, and the working poor. They're all across the county, but it's concentrated in the Germantown-Gaithersburg corridor, where Manna's warehouse is located, which we are going to renovate and re-engineer. But we need to be closer to the communities that we serve in East County. The recent proposed changes at the federal level, including the public charge rule and other administrative policies and practices, as we've just heard referred to by Mr. Henson, cause us to be a little bit worried about increased demand in the coming years. We want to be ready for whatever faces us, and we are needing the $400,000 appropriation from the county to create a center which will have a state-of-the-art choice pantry offering fresh food and giving access to community services that build self-sufficiency, provide professionalized participant services and case management by Manna and our peers, transform our distribution network to match supply with demand, improve our food recovery and processing network, especially as we try to assist seniors and other vulnerable neighbors, expand our curriculum, and offer multi-purpose collaboration space for advocacy and community building. Our work is in line with the equity principles of the East County Opportunity Zone. That's something I'm very proud of. I'm also proud, and the board is proud, that this supplemental comes to you from Mr. Leggett and his staff. Mr. Reamer, you recently noted in a tribute that Mr. Leggett is an exemplary leader who always gets us where we need to be. Well, East County is where MANA needs to be, and so I appreciate your support of the $400,000.
Thank you very much, Jackie DeCarlo. We really appreciate your work with MANA. Daphne. Oh, if you'll move the mic, please, closer, yes. Jackie, you can, yeah, there.
Council President Reamer and members of the County Council. My name is Daphne Raskus. I'm the Executive Director of Sunflower Bakery and a resident of Montgomery County for over 20 years. Thank you for this opportunity to testify about our supplemental request for $300,000 to help make possible our expansion and relocation to the city of Rockville. This expansion is urgent so we can help meet the growing demand for employment training of young adults and teens with learning differences in our county. In this new training center, we plan to expand our pastry arts employment training and teen job exposure programs, and to add new skilled employment training programs such as bread baking and shipping and packaging. In FY 2018, we served 58 young adults and teens. In the new space, we plan to double this number within 2 to 3 years. After a 1.5-year search in the county, we identified the most appropriate property for our needs at 5951 Howpine Road. This location, right next to Twin Brook Metro, is ideal for our trainees, teen participants, and staff who are largely dependent on public transportation. The nearly 5,700 square foot location, which is 4.5 times the size of our current location, allows for ongoing and new skilled employment training, employee development, year-round job training exposure for teens, and the provision of ServSafe and other classes to other county agencies. This location also allows for a small retail space so that we can provide customer service training, which further enhances the marketability of our students to employers. Since 2010, we've served over 264 young adults and teens in our programs. Over 80% of our pastry arts graduates have secured employment within 6 months of graduation. And on average, they're remaining in their jobs for 2.5 years or more. Our graduates are employed by Montgomery County businesses, and they contribute to the county tax base, as opposed to being dependents. This year, we're going to celebrate our 10th anniversary, thanks to ongoing support of foundations, corporations, and individuals, along with the JCRC, and of course, our partnership with the county. We're extremely grateful for the county executive and county council support in FY19 for $150,000 in capital funds for the expansion, and for their support since 2013. We now request additional supplemental funding for the full build-out of our new employment training facility to be completed by late spring 2019. Given the time-sensitive nature of our project and the need to move forward with the build-out, we respectfully request that the members of the County Council provide full support so we can make timely and meaningful progress in helping greater numbers of county residents with learning differences secure employment. MANA provides a critical need to the community at large, and Sunflower Bakery is happy to support their $400,000 appropriation request as well.
Thank you. Meredith.
Thank you, Council President Reamer, and members of the County Council. I'm going to actually be very brief. For the most part, say ditto to everything that Daphne has said, but I just want to add that the JCRC is clearly extremely supportive of this project. We partner with Sunflower. We've come to you before to talk with you about the incredible work that they do here in the county. And we see this as another incredible opportunity for the county to again partner with Sunflower on its ambitious and critical efforts to address the great need and growing need for skilled employment training opportunities for young adults and teens with learning differences. We fully support the appropriation for MANA as well, which is clearly doing incredible work, and it provides critical food assistance to people throughout the entire county, although I do understand, I live up in Gaithersburg, so I understand the focus is there, so we support them moving to the East County as well, or expanding to the East County. So for both of these projects, we ask that the County Council give a favorable report on both supplemental appropriations. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Meredith. Appreciate your work in JCRC. Sorry. Mr. Berliner, who moved to adopt the Food Security Strategic Plan.
No, just very briefly, I could have been listening to Mr. Leventhal too much recently as we wax eloquently on our about to be leaving. But one of the privileges of serving in this county is the extraordinary leaders of our nonprofit community. And we, Meredith, if you'll excuse me, we have two of them sitting next to you. But really, Jackie, the work of MANA and your work is really so exemplary. And it's just been a privilege to work with you all these years, and the work you're doing to bring about a hunger-free Montgomery County is so terribly important, and you do it so well. And Sunflower Bakery is just one of all of our favorites. What's not to love about the work you do to bring employment opportunities to those that have learning differences, and you really make such a difference in so many people's lives. And so I just say to you, we are so blessed in our community to have leaders like you. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
You're here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Mr. Berliner. But I was remiss. I, of course, fully support, the board fully supports Sunflower. They're one of our partners. They donate food. It's a community food rescue. So here, of course, for your great work.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. All right. And then finally, we have a public hearing with no speaker. And that is a public hearing on an amendment to the county government's FY 19 to 24 Capital Improvements Program and a special appropriation to the capital budget, Department of Environmental Protection, in the amount of $59,135 for stormwater management retrofit countywide bridge replacement. Action is tentatively scheduled immediately following the hearing. There are no speakers. Do we need a motion? We do. It's been moved by Mr. Berliner, seconded by Mr. Rice. And all those in favor, show of hands. That is unanimous. And now we need a motion to go to closed session to consider matters that concern a proposal for a business or industrial organization to locate, expand, or remain in the state pursuant to Maryland Code, General Provisions, Article 3305A4. Topic is retention of a certain business in the county. Mr. Katz has moved it. Ms. Navarro has seconded. And all those in favor of going into closed session, raise your hands. That is unanimous. Among those present, Mr. Elrich, were you a yes on the closed session? Yeah. And then we'll go into closed session.